Católica Portuguesa, Doutora Isabel Capelou Gil, is going to welcome you all.
Madam Prorector, dear deans, distinguished guests, all those who are here present in this room and also via Zoom platform, I think. Good afternoon to you all. I'm delighted to welcome you to the launching event of Insure, the Innovation in Sustainability and Regeneration Hub, co-created by Católica School of Biotechnology, Católica Porto Business School, and Planeteers New Generation. And my first words go to thank the two schools and Planeteers for doing this together and working on a platform that we believe will bring truly change and enact change at a watershed moment such as the one that we are living now. This is a project that aligns the mission of the university with the core capabilities and the expertise of two of the university's top-notch schools and Planeteers, an organization that was built to aspire and inspire for a better world. We are all aware that the moment we are living is critical. Critical in the hazards and risks ahead, be they environmental, societal, political, or economic. But though the situation is critical, it is not hopeless. And I'm not simply saying this out of reckless optimism. Ours is a watershed moment that requires leadership for change and commitment to really act on good intentions. The two key words of the new platform, sustainability and regeneration, effectively encapsulate the defining challenges of our times and the need for a new partnership between academia and business leaders. Universities are the focal point of a new economic model that is no longer simply based on manufacturing and commodities, but is driven and led by those who own intellectual capital. This clearly requires stronger links between business and academia. It means that businesses must tap into the resources available in universities more effectively, and universities must be flexible in catering to the changing business demands. And in fact, this is the story that at Católica, UCP has been successfully telling since its inception, creating bridges with business with a vision that life-changing science requires a partnership with forward-looking entrepreneurs. The commitment to sustainability is the key driver at the heart of the university's new strategic development plan titled The Value of Values, Creating the Future Now. We understand sustainability not as an element of strategy, but as the strategy per se, working across governance models, organizational culture, teaching and research, as well as the financial and environmental structures. Aligned with the EU's Green Deal and Next Generation programs, it is clear that envisioning a moment of transition to a prospective net zero scenario cannot be an exercise of magical thinking, but requires effective commitment of academia to put all its resources in the service of a global societal goal of fair transition. Working with thought leaders and our stakeholders is of the essence to seize the challenge to change everything. And this is the interpolation of Scott Galloway at NYU, assessing risk scenarios and testing transition pathways. Our task is to deploy education and research to achieve this goal, to promote the transition that is feasible, equitable, fair, and just. This requires aligning the skill sets of our graduates to a new green job market. It requires working with industry to regenerate and restructure fossil-based development models while mitigating the costs to those affected by this change and promoting economic growth. At Católica, we are not simply used to talk the talk, but we also walk the walk. The School of Biotech, and you will allow me to single out biotechnology, has been at the forefront of calls for the implementation of circular economy models with a very robust R&D portfolio leading to innovation in processes and creating new products for industry. Católica is a purpose-driven institution, ranked as the #1 university in Portugal in impact-driven research and for the third consecutive year as the top university in Portugal, according to the Times Higher Education ranking. Leading demands honoring our commitments, and we believe it is our responsibility to work with our business partners to find solutions for their challenges and collaborate in sustaining the transition to a more equitable and sustainable economic development model. The Insure Hub will certainly contribute to new possible pathways to achieve this goal, and I would like to invite all those who share our vision to join us in this endeavor. Thank you.
I now call Professor Isabel Braga da Cruz. She's Pro-Rector of Universidade Católica Portuguesa.
Professora Isabel Cabral Gil, Rector of the Universidade Católica Portuguesa, Professora Paula Castro, Dean of Escola Superior de Biotecnologia, Professor Rui Sousa, Dean of Católica Porto Business School, to the Insurance team, Professora Manela Pintado, Dr. João Cortês, Professor João Pinto, Dr. António Vasconcelos, to all the audience, I would like to address a warm welcome to Universidade Católica Portuguesa at Porto, to the first international conference, Insure Innovation, Sustainability and Regeneration Hub. A special thanks to the speakers who kindly accepted the invitation to be here today, and also to the attendees who present in this auditorium or in streaming will give this session the floor it reserves. Sustainability and regeneration are key areas for the society. The European Green Deal, the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations 2030, as many other guiding initiatives are urgent calls for action. But action is in organization hands. This was the motivation that inspires the creation of the Insure Hub that today is launched here at Católica. Insure is an initiative whose main objective is to create vibrant international ecosystems and multidisciplinary and transdisciplinary knowledge that promotes circular, sustainable, and regenerative business solutions enhanced by novel and innovative technologies. The initiative results for the mobilization of the Universidade Católica Portuguesa through Católica Porto Business School and Escola Superior de Biotecnologia, in a partnership with the Planeteers, New Generation, along with a set of national and international entities with high potential to promote and induce important transformations towards improved sustainability and regeneration. In today's conference, we'll have a brief presentation of the Insure, as well as a variety of talks and discussions where speakers will share their experience and perspectives on sustainability and regeneration and application to their organizations, as well as some case studies. I believe it will be very stimulating and inspiring for change. Today, we have speakers coming from different geographies and about 300 registered attendees who are joining us around the world, from USA, Germany, Brazil, Spain, UK, Cyprus, Pakistan, and Portugal. Also, we have today with us a large number of companies and entities, around 120, from different sectors whose presence is pivotal for this initiative. A special word to our sponsors who believed in this effort from the very first minute. And I'll mention them: Crédito Agrícola, Amiris, Aquitex, Associação de Produtores das Maçãs de Alcoaça, KPMG, MDS, Águas de Monchique, a Mota em Gil Capital, a Mota em Gil Renewing, and Schmidt Sons Elevators. To all of them, a special thanks for joining us and for supporting this initiative. To finish, I'd like to acknowledge the organization from both sides, Católica and Planeteers, as well as to all the others that turn the Insure ideas into a reality, for the commitment, energy, and enthusiasm put in all the organization in such areas that are so relevant for the society, for our planet, and for the economy. I wish you a very interesting conference, the first of an alive and inspiring Insure Hub. Thanks a lot.
The leaders of the Insure Hub will present the project. So I call Professor Manuela Pintado, the director of the Center for Biotechnology and Fine Chemistry from the Faculty of Biotechnology. I call Professor João Pinto, Professor of Finance from the Católica Porto Business School, and Dr. António Vasconcelos. He's the co-leader from Planeteer's New Generation.
Okay, so I'll start this presentation. So it's about Insure Hub. It's an innovation and regeneration hub. And in fact, this hub is an initiative nurtured by Universidade, Católica Portuguesa in Porto, through its schools, Católica Porto Business School, and the Faculty of Biotechnology with Planeteer's New Generation. Before moving to the next slide, what we aim for, I would like to give you a little context and history. Universidade Católica Portuguesa has two core pillars in its mission. I would say that we have excellence in teaching, of course, innovative research, but for sure that we have a third pillar that is very important for us, which is the knowledge transfer. And these knowledge transfer processes are based on very well-established processes. And we do this through basically research, knowledge transfer, and consultancy units. So this hub, or the creation of this hub, came about basically, or especially in Escola Superior de Biotecnologia, or biotech school. During several years, different projects based on circular economy were developed, different knowledge, different intellectual property on different processes, innovative processes, and even the creation of bioactive compounds were developed, but they stayed basically within the school. And what we have figured out 4 years ago, basically when we started our large and the most known project, which is Alchemy Project, a partnership with Ameris Inc., which is a public, US public company, is that in fact we have all of this knowledge, but we need to transfer this knowledge to firms, to the society. Okay, so based on this idea, we start thinking on this basically, or we start with a discussion between our biotech school and Planeteers. And then we figure out that in order to do that, in order to solve the problems that our partners, the firms, bring to us, we need to think on this basically on interdisciplinary framework or based on interdisciplinary framework. That's when we start thinking on putting on the top of this other areas, and that's when the business school come in with other knowledge areas like leadership and strategy for sustainability, like new business models, and of course, if we are implementing new projects, and these new projects on sustainability and regeneration needs to be funded, we need to raise funds. So we need also to bring to the table the topic of sustainable finance, for example. Okay, so based on this, what we aim for, as you can see, is to promote circular, sustainable, and regenerative business solutions powered by disruptive innovation and technology. And the key question here is, what if you could convert your bioproducts or waste in new products? So this is the key question here. So what we bring a powerful articulation of ecosystems. So starting with Planeteers and their partners, with Católica faculty members, researchers, and partners, through leaders, practitioners, and entrepreneurs, we want to impact on the public and private organizations. So we have here a second question, that is, what if together we could inspire new public policies? So this is a very important and key question here. So what we bring, Insure Hub brings forefront knowledge and research labs, along with the capacity to mobilize practitioners to address the challenges ahead regarding innovation in sustainability and regeneration. So this is what we bring, and this is the starting point for everything. Antonio, there you go.
First of all, to welcome you and to thank deeply to Católica for taking up this challenge and to wanting to really go into transformative journeys into sustainability. Our mission to help advance the Portuguese economy to the forefront of EU as it transformed into the world's leading region. So EU has affirmed that they will be leading in the world with sustainability, the Green Deal, and we for many years have been working with leading thinkers and practitioners across the world, and we are combining these forces, international and Portuguese know-how with this fantastic team of Católica. So a resource efficient and competitive economy by ensuring no net emissions of greenhouse gases and no waste by 2050, economic growth decoupled from resource use, and no person and no place left behind. Only to mention that 2050 is not enough. We need to, of course, also settle targets, clear targets for this decade. And this is what moves us, is to create momentum and build capacity with businesses, society, kids, everyone. So Insure Hub, what will we do? To provide support to companies and business clusters in business evolution in new investments. To promote sustainable and regenerative entrepreneurship. To develop sustainability literacy and to convey innovative and disruptive training. And so this is not only very aligned with the Green Deal, but we want to really bring in what is behind all the ideas of the Green Deal, which is systems thinking, a new type of knowledge that we need to bring to everyone, right? Including starting with the students and with kids, to understand the rules of nature, to build capacity with businesses, and to guide people to have like a compass to guide their businesses towards those big and bold targets. It's me still? Yes. So advisory. Advisory is a key element in which, of course, it is not about writing reports. More and more needs to be interactive, needs to be capacity building, needs to be work in combination with business leaders in their teams, in their stakeholders. Let's not forget, we need to involve all the value chain. And so we need to bring everyone on board. Leadership is about bringing everyone together. We have advisory services to companies and business clusters and services to regional entities, thematic forums and municipal councils. So a bit these two things, which by the way, will come together. We hear, for instance, that the EU is promoting climate neutral cities. They are saying academia plus citizens plus businesses need to come together to make this happen. So it is all combined. But so on the campuses and business clusters, and we have a lot of SMEs. So let's not forget that we need to work with clusters a lot, and associations also. And so we have sustainable and regenerative strategies, strategic LCAs, thinking, dynamically with new business models along all the value chain, understand really how to make things sustainable, how to develop materials sustainably, disruptive innovation to valorize and upcycle waste streams. And then, of course, new clusters of disruptive, regenerative, and circular investments. We need to look at new ideas based on the knowledge model. The creation of a strong program to support sustainable innovation enhanced by academic and business environments in articulation with think and do things. This is very important. We need to bring think together with do. It's the work, for example, of a big, one of our big speakers that we'll have more at the end of the day. It's really about think and do things. We need to combine the knowledge, the learning, and the action.
Well, besides this entrepreneurship role that we expect to boost also through our platform, we also want to develop sustainability literacy. It's very important to give to the society, to educate the society, in order they can understand what is sustainability, what is regeneration, how they can integrate this in their lives. So it's very important in this case also to use this platform to empower society and general companies and the health. It's very important they will be doing through different materials, engaging different schools, preparing materials that making them exactly with the dialogue and the text that they can understand. It's very difficult sometimes to pass this message of sustainability. It's very difficult to engage the community. So it's really important that we can adapt these materials and engage these high schools in order we can start engaging still in younger generations to educate and to explain them how important is this sustainability and regeneration if you want to save the planet. Additionally, we need also to use our platform, our knowledge, our partners also to inspire new public policies. It's very important. We cannot advance in sustainability. We know we are facing in the companies a lot of barriers due to regulatory. So we need to engage policies in order we can move forward all together in the best way. No, I think I need. So besides that, we also want to convey disruptive training. It's important. There is a lack of information, a lack of knowledge in companies, in the academia even. So we need to help also through this platform, training people. And the first point, we expect already to launch next year a postgraduate course in sustainability and regeneration. So we'll be informing you about this, but this eventually, even through the years, we expect to launch new postgraduate courses adapted to the needs of the sustainability and regeneration of different stakeholders' needs. Also, it's important for us, and we are already preparing to launch advanced courses. And we need to have these advanced courses tailor-made to the needs of the companies and different stakeholders in order that we can in-house or in Católica University, we can train these people in order to integrate all these concepts and not just live about concepts, but integrate and implement with a benefit for the company and for all the other stakeholders. So in this case, sorry, no problem. So besides that, we are already, especially in this case in the School of Biotechnology, we are accumulating different case studies of success in terms of valorization of byproducts and other sustainability case studies that we want to progress and use these case studies to inspire companies and to inspire also and tell the government that it's possible, in fact, to have sustainability in the economy. And finally, in order to improve literacy, we'll be also creating out-of-box materials in order to inspire and to educate the community. So besides that, I want to show you today some case studies. So we were not working alone. We had a long experience. So I would say that in ESB, we start working with waste valorization since 1993. And since there, together with other colleagues and in different environments, we have been working a lot on sustainability, circular economy. So we have a long experience, but also business school. Business schools have been done, Católica Porto Business School have been done different studies. And we can see here just a few examples. And just to show you that these case studies are not just in a specific field. We have been working in renewable energy, industry strategy, biotechnology. We have been working with chemicals. We have been working with corporate strategy. And this is very important because that's why we believe at this stage we could all together join this knowledge and efforts to offer to the community and the companies this knowledge for improving the sustainability and regeneration of the companies. Just to give you a more detailed example, just to concretize a little about what we can do. This is an example that we started in 2016, a strong collaboration with Emery's when we did a roadshow in the United States. And there was, in fact, a need of a company that was just working in a sustainable way through fermentation, but generating a lot of byproducts, a lot of waste streams. And in fact, in that moment, John Mel has a vision that he'd need to be much more sustainable in the company. So matching our experience with this need from Emery's, we could start preparing a project, a big project that was approved in 2018, Alchemy Project. And this project aims, in fact, to valorize co-products from all the waste streams of fermentation, from the sugar cane until the distillates, but also aims not only valorization, but trying to make this fermentation industry more productive and using innovation to make the products much more attractive for the market. Sometimes it's not just to create innovative products. We need to prepare and demonstrate the potential of the products in order they can have added value in the market. Otherwise, it's very difficult to compete with the natural resources products. And in this case, with Emery's and Católica University, we have been creating this alchemy project that is unique. And I would say probably one of the largest biotechnology programs ever approved in Portugal, with about 42 million budget, and that was hiring 70 researchers. In fact, at the moment, we are around 85 researchers working in this specific project. And we expect until 2023, we hope to have around 32 different products that are not just in a specific market, but will be at least for 5 different markets, from food, cosmetics, agrochemical, materials, and pharmaceuticals. So this is a good example that also I think was the boosting of our Insure, because in fact we were starting talking several times with business school, with Planetiers about this project, and this was probably the first stone of our Insure. So this, I leave you with this example, and I hope most of you can follow with us with much more examples. Thank you so much.
If I'm pressing the right button, but it does not operate. Now it works. If you would like to download the report that is public for this, you can try this QR code with your phone, and you will be seeing some of the main slides that you can download from there. Of course, I will show more today than is in that report, and trying to give you some of the highlights without also revealing the individual organizations that are behind it also, because that's the agreement that we made. The motivation of our study can be explained by this simple picture that you see here. On the horizontal, you see a social dimension. On the vertical, you see the environmental dimension. And basically, there's bubbles representing countries. Now, generally, we've been moving in this direction, but while we're doing that, we're also moving up. In other words, social development happens, but environmental footprint increases. While what we should actually be doing is moving in this direction, meaning social development, but also this environmental footprint going down. And business, of course, has been contributing to this. On the one hand, to satisfy the human needs that are behind that. But at the same time, as we know, also business has been contributing to the side effects of that we can see around us every day. And of course, this led to specific questions as well for us, although that we've been working with business for quite some years. And we wanted to understand what is now the top management's view on the topic of sustainability. Of course, we asked questions about their perspectives, but also about what they think about sustainability and strategy development and how they perceive that. But of course, also how they would then implement that. Basically, we asked 40 questions, quite a lot in 1 to 2 hours, to make sure that all these different topics are covered. Myself, but also my colleague later, Rüdiger, will also be looking at how that actually is implemented within leadership and operations and strategy, 3 aspects that we work with. So let's look at the profile of the organizations and the interviewees. We've been interviewing more than 50 companies and their leaders within 12 countries around Europe, mostly on the Western side, as Antonio already mentioned, 6 here in Portugal, quite a few in Germany, but also in the various other countries. And of course, a variety of industries. You can see the financial here, but basically have various segments of society in there, with the revenue varying from 100 million up until 10 billion and above, with a various client focus from business to business and business to client and combinations thereof. When looking at the financial organizations, the banks, the investors, the asset managers, we basically interviewed people with a leverage of 2.5 trillion euros. Add the 2 trillion of revenue related to the organizations that are not in finance per se, that's quite a lot of leverage, right? So they represent relevant people, a relevant view. And as well, the ownership. Usually you hear a lot about the listed companies. We interviewed about 30% of listed companies, but also the family businesses, at what really drives the engine of the economy. Of course, the people that we interviewed, the leaders, 1/3 of them is the top tier in organizations. So the CEOs, the COOs, etc. But also the second level. Now, it is only fair to say that even though quite a lot of people had sustainability within their portfolio, it was not per se their function. So we asked them a lot of questions on being strategic about the topic of sustainability, but we did not expect them to know everything about sustainability. But at the same time, of course, as these are strategic topics, you would expect them to know at least the minimum. When looking at the number of people working for these organizations, I'll keep it short, 2,500 as a median. With a variance of smaller organizations, at least 150 up until 140,000. So quite a variety there. But all in all, a variety in business. Now, one of the lenses that we looked at, through, or the perspectives that we take, is one of whole system thinking. That means on the one hand, you see the nested circles, where the environment is something that we all depend on, that the society depends on, and within that, of course, the economy and your organization and its stakeholders in various ways. But we also need there an understanding of what full sustainability actually means. For that, we have luckily the heavy lifting has been done. As mentioned before, the natural step and the various people in science have been doing heavy lifting with regards to coming up with system conditions or sustainability principles that we are using for that. So let's kick off the actual study results. On the one hand, of course, we know that sustainability and the many related topics, they are getting attention from everywhere. You'll recognize this. Actually, this was research from the beginning of this year, and it's already outdated. If we would now look for examples of what we see happening out there, I think that this picture would have been totally different. Doesn't mean that it's not relevant, because it still is. But it just shows as well how fast things are currently going in comparison to previous years. When we asked the various leaders, the interviewees, so when you think about the next 10 to 20 years, how will sustainability influence our society with the various aspects that are mentioned here? Now, what you can see is that in the blue, the answers were high and very high. You can see that there is some kind of a consensus that sustainability is influencing the economy, the geopolitics, society, technology. There is a good consensus here with regards to the numbers. The overall average is around 4, and that would be exactly high. Of course, there's some differentiation as well. Geopolitics, where you see quite a lot of people as well that don't believe in geopolitics, that is going to be driven by sustainability. And also with regards to the legal and regulatory, we noticed that some people were very much up to date on what's happening currently with regards to regulatory, but others were talking about regulatory as if it was going to happen in 10 years from now, that politics and legal are going to be slow. Well, actually, as you may know, it is going a little bit faster than that, also with the Green Deal and the various related aspects. When we asked, so within your industry, and remember there were quite a few, within your industry, what are the most relevant topics that you see impacting the industry? 2 times the top 5, highlighting that climate change was mentioned 27 times by 27 different organizations. And then as quite a bit later, biodiversity loss, diversity and inclusion and health were the topics that were mentioned the most as impacting their industry. So this is about the financials, it is about the manufacturing organizations, etc. When we then ask, okay, so what is the expected impact on your organization now, but also in the next 1 to 5 years and beyond 5 years? You see here a variety of topics that kept these people busy. On the one hand, in, let's say, middle blue, you see CO2. Currently, they're focusing on CO2 reduction, whereas later on, they're focusing more, same color, towards neutrality, CO2 neutrality. But they're already setting themselves up. In gray, you'll see customer satisfaction, or you'll see regulatory compliance, also with a thread throughout there. Interesting one is the highlighted blue. That's about strategy. You'll see that strategy is in a number 3 at present with some organizations, and then they're strategizing and planning to be executing that. But interestingly enough, there are some other organizations that are already strategizing here, so they're a little bit faster than the ones that are here. But there's also others that start strategy development on sustainability in 5 years from now. Just a bit of realistic realism in there as well. When we look at the various stakeholders, we ask which ones are the most demanding with regards to sustainability. You'll see here the top 4, the employees, the customers, the shareholders or owners, and the legislators being those ones. And of course, there were a bunch of others. And in the report, you can read what exactly they were expecting from these businesses. But what is the important red line in there is that you saw purpose being requested by employees, purpose being requested by the customers. Also that there was credible communication, transparency, not some minimal non-material topic like double-sided printing that they've achieved that in an airliner. That's not what it is about, and people see through that nowadays. So they're asking for material focus. And of course, also the last one I want to mention specifically, Europe is seeing sustainability, or in other words, environmental, social, and governance topics as the differentiator in comparison to other regions, such as the United States, such as Asia, because it is a competitive advantage that we can create all together. We need to understand that, and we need to tag along and make sure that we are successful with this, because it is good for our health, good for our planet, and good for the profits and innovation. If we look at the challenge, the sustainability challenge, we asked at a global level, what do you see happening out there? And of course, some topics were mentioned more, the larger ones, more than others, but this is what they saw happening. Of course, there's a lot of stuff behind that, but for the past 3 decades, we've been using this particular figure, and it is a funnel with declining walls showing the decreasing space to maneuver. Because if one topic now goes down and another topic goes down, and you take all these trends together, it actually represents that funnel. Whereas what we should be doing, and with, of course, those environmental and social pressures, and what we should be doing is making sure that we move towards sustainability, because what we see happening is already now our organizations, our countries are running into the walls of those funnels. That's not something of the future. That's something that we've been seeing happening for the past decades already, and it's only intensifying now. Of course, where we need to move is towards that opening in the funnel. And even further, as some people will say, sustainability is not enough. We need to move towards regeneration. And of course, we need to do that at a global level. But before doing that, we need to go through this sustainable period. We need to stabilize first and stop it from further reducing that space to maneuver. We need to move that up, and we do that with various countermeasures. Those countermeasures were also mentioned. You see here activism, you see the regulatory changes, you see sustainable innovation from competitors, from themselves, and all these different topics are happening at the same time. I'm sure that you will recognize them. But this is what leaders experience as the global pressures and the decreased space to maneuver. I have a frog in my throat, and before I start coughing, thank you. When we ask for sustainability, what does that mean for you personally? Well, ask the question 1,000 times, you'll get 1,000 different answers. We also asked this for the business, and they basically said that 40% of the organization said that they had a shared definition of sustainability. Of course, when checking, when validating this, when giving the feedback to the different interviewees, we did not find evidence of that. Quite a lot of organizations did not have a shared definition, other than maybe a Brundtland or something like that, which doesn't provide you with the information on where to go. Now, if you look at, if we wanted to look at setting goals, what are the goals out there? And generally, we see that science informs organizations, and on the basis of that, they set goals. You see that for the EU, for example, you see that for Paris at international level. So we were interested to learn also, how does that work with business? Do you have any long-term goals? 36% said yes, and those were related to climate. But only 24% actually had multiple sustainability topic goals. I don't know what you think about that, but I thought it was pretty shocking. And if you then understand that there were 3 without a date, so you have a goal, but you don't have a date. 19 mentioned that they were working on it. That's good. But 40% did not have any goals related to sustainability for the long term. So how can you strategize if you don't set success for yourself? Do you have a plan? Without having a goal, let that be clear. Do you then measure and monitor? Do you report? See that there are some organizations that apparently are reporting, but they're not measuring. It's interesting because that also relates to listed companies. So few companies have long-term sustainability goals, plans to achieve them, to control them, to report and commit publicly. So I heard the various inspirational speakers earlier, but this is also part of realism of what's happening out there today. And we need to address that because few organizations use science-based concepts, science-based principles. Few have a shared definition of sustainability, as I mentioned. Few have a sustainability vision and purpose, or, well, half, good. Strategic goals, just talked about, and 23 did not have any of these above. So not only not having goals, but not having any of this either. In other words, how are we going to ensure, or how are these businesses going to ensure that they can navigate this funnel with a reasonable chance of success? Well, basically we developed or we are speaking in particular terms with regards to maturity. So where are these organizations? Because every organization has a different maturity level, and based on that, they will have different answers. And let me then first introduce the sustainability maturity spiral that we are using for this, and some of the terms that we use. Now, at the bottom, we have plunderers. That's how we call them. They typically are pre-compliant. And if you look at their perspective on sustainability, they basically say, well, it kills our profitability. It's just making things a little bit harder and difficult. And why would we do that? Okay, if the fines get too big, yeah, of course we'll change. But other than that, they won't move. And you have that next level up, the players. And they are basically taking into account compliance. So they fit with the rule of law. Means that if there's a new law coming up, that they will make sure that they comply with that, possibly a little bit late, but they will comply. And of course, you have the pragmatists who understand that there are more than just the legislators, that there are also customers and employees that they need to work with. And that's where you see that they are focused on satisfying clients. And this is where CSR is also happening, for example. Those were, between them, there are relatively small steps. When you start looking at the pioneering level, these organizations start looking at, well, it drives our strategy. They are really integrating the various topics across the organization, all the different areas. And even further up, the paradigm shifters, the Patagonias of this world, the organizations that are really shifting paradigm, and they say, well, it shapes our purpose. We have a purpose, and this helps shape it. And of course, the organizations at the lower end, they focus on risk mitigation. a little bit higher, it's about value creation. I'll go into these terms a little bit more. And material impact is then at the top level, a real good positive impact. But of course, the one on the lower end, they are really degrading. Antonio, how are we on time? Okay. Thank you so much. Generally, when we ask, okay, where are you now with your current efforts on this particular maturity curve? Here you see the different values. So there's, luckily they are above where they need to be, as in compliance. But there were only few organizations that actually claim to lead their industries. And I believe that they were also doing that. Generally, organizations are below what stakeholders would expect. Now, if you then look, you ask the same question, where will you want to be in 5 to 7 years? The good thing is that everyone wanted to be up there. There was at least a diagonal movement up there where organizations really had the ambition to do a lot more. And they were aiming for sustainable leadership. Well, you see there a big number in there. There is not enough room probably. So it's good that they're moving towards that higher end, but maybe it's not completely realistic. Quite a few want to be fast followers, by the way. Let's hope that they're not all intending to be fast followers, because then it slows down the entire group. If we look at the business benefits, they presented value creation, cost reduction, and risk mitigation in various ways. You can see this in the report in more detailed ways. Just what I want to highlight is there are a lot of benefits, and not all of these benefits were mentioned by the same organization, meaning that there are still other aspects in the in benefits from sustainability which you may not have explored. I'm going to skip innovation for now, considering time, other than one, and that is that organizations that considered themselves as innovative, only 57% of that. Out of that, 1/3 actually had criteria for sustainability within innovation. Well, if you don't have criteria for sustainability in your innovation, how are you going to make sure that all your products, your business model innovation, all that kind of stuff, how that's going to change in the right direction? I'm going to skip this. That's in the report. When we look at leadership, we also take a whole system perspective. Meaning that for any organization, you'll have parts, you'll have individuals, you'll have teams. And when there is an external stimuli, then what usually happens is that people start, moving, they start acting, some more than others, and they start talking and start aligning, dialogues around it. And then they decide direction together. Now, the various topics that fit underneath, you need to have for direction, a vision, strategic goals and such. For alignment, you need roadmaps, you need dialogues, you need balanced scorecards and governance, to make sure that everyone is aligned. And for commitment, this is where purpose, mission, values, but also budgets fit. And of course, we, being consultants, being developers, developed a model for that. So leadership relates to all three aspects. You need to have all three in place. Now, we mapped the various organizations onto that as well. So on the one hand, the current maturity of the organization, where they perceive themselves to be, and on the horizontal, the direction, alignment, and commitment, in other words, the leadership index. Interesting to see on the left side, the left upper side, there's an overconfidence of organizations that see themselves as being relatively high, but at the same time, they may not have directional aspects, such as mentioned before. They may not be aligning as much at leadership level. They may not be committed and aligning budget so much to it. And of course, with regards to direction as well, there's a bunch of frameworks out there, and we ask, what are the agendas with regards to sustainability that you endorse or that you relate with? A bunch of them were mentioned. interesting to see as well is that 42% did not relate or to or endorse any of these. And these tools are, by the way, not meant or intended as strategy tools or to be more strategic. So in summary, of the message that I have is sustainability is on everyone's agenda. Pressure is increasing from all stakeholders. You need a framework. You need to make sure that you understand together with the rest of your organization what sustainability is about and set at least your goals. And looking at the maturity of organizations right now, luckily there's high ambitions. And the high ambitions makes sure as well that there's a lot going to be happening in the next years within business. I showed as well a bold leadership is needed with direction, alignment, and commitment. But that is where Rudiger will be talking about a little bit more, in the same way as he will be talking about the key recommendations and success factors moving forward. Rudiger, can I give you the floor?
Sure. I have now how many minutes left? 5? Thanks, buddy.
Good luck.
Thank you. I'll need it. All right. So, hey, great to be here. So I tried to speed it up a little. How much time have I left? Okay, I tried to speed up a little. Okay, so here we go. Luckily, we can build on some of the ground that Edwin already covered, and you learned about the funnel and the cylinder and how many countries, but also organizations are already in the process of hitting the wall or already hit them. And what you want to have is you want to have an understanding, what does that equilibrium look like? What does sustainability truly mean? Because let's say you have a definition for that, you could start moving strategically in that direction. And on an ecological level, there are various approaches out there. The two major ones are dematerialization and substitution with all the additional stuff that you probably know, waste elimination, circularity, virtualization, localization, they all fit together. And if anyone is out here looking for innovation, you will find a lot of innovation potential in this area. But not just on this field, this is not just products, it's innovation everywhere. On business models, on the way you lead an organization, et cetera, et cetera. Now, coming back to that picture that we had before. So if you do have a definition of what socio-ecological sustainability truly means, then based on that definition, you can develop your vision of an organization, your BHAG, if you've heard that term before, your big, hairy, audacious goal, your moonshot. And based on that, you would not start with commitment and then somewhere align and maybe eventually find your direction. It's the other way around. Based on that, you can find your direction, align correspondingly everyone who is involved in achieving that, and then we look all into our eyes and say, are we really going to want to go for it? And then there's the full commitment, ideally, because otherwise it is not going to work. And even if that might still lead to some adaptation here, notice the PowerPoint animation, that's a cool one. It took me about, I don't know, 2 hours to figure that out. Anyways, but while you might still be moving around here, what you do have is you have your North Star that provides you guidance where to go to, which is built on that shared understanding of what sustainability truly means. I can only cover that part very quickly. As Edwin said before, it's rooted in science, so I will not go into share the deduction how you come there. But all the symptoms that you see out there, be it on social or ecological level, talking about climate change, ocean acidification, species extinction, etc. These are all symptoms, but they have 3 root causes and they changed around into principles, mean we are sustainable in an ecological sense when we no longer systematically contribute to taking material from the earth crust and introducing that into the biosphere. Biggest problem there, burning of fossil fuels. But this is not enough, so just dealing with climate change will not cut it. It's also that we no longer systematically introduce materials into the biosphere that the biosphere cannot process. Just take an example of plastic in the ocean. The biosphere does not know how to process that. That again is not all, but we also want to stop systematically preventing nature from running in cycles. And just yesterday or the day before yesterday, I heard in the news that current number of football fields that are cut off in the rainforest, it just takes 3 minutes As we speak, every 3 minutes, they cut that off, and that's just one part of that. So degradation. This is required for us to continue to exist as a species. But even within our society, we would like to make sure that we not, whatever our power system may be, systematically build up barriers with respect to physical, mental, and emotional health, with respect to influence in the decision-making process, with respect to building up competence. And we're just talking about that, what's going to happen here, which is essential. Treating everyone impartial, independent from their sexual orientation, their gender, their color of the skin, their religious beliefs. And last but not least, we are a meaning-seeking species. We ask the question, why are we doing certain things? If we don't find meaning, societies fall apart. And whenever societies fall apart on a limited planet, then that's bad for business. So taking that into the consideration, we coined a term which we call future fitness. And we say, and the first part is usually very easy to accept for business, that is a condition of a company when the interaction of, well, people, we all get together as leaders and we think about cool stuff, of operations and long-term strategy. If that all plays together in such a way that we have sustainable success. Everyone on board so far, right? But now here it is. Without systematically violating the sustainability principles of the surrounding system, society, and environment on which we depend on, and preferably contributing to the future regeneration and thriving of these systems. And lucky us that while you just learned about the sustainability principles, our friend at Future Fit Foundation have developed that further and translated that into Future Fit business benchmark goals. And you're going to learn something about that later today anyway. And that is a fantastic connection of translating that science into something that business can work with. Now, obviously, based on that, we call something, we never came up with a better term than calling it 6 bubbles. But what we would like to express is that covers any area of a business. So it is about governance and leadership. It's about your products and your services. It's about the processes that you have in your organization. It is, of course, about communication. It's about the very essence of your organization, DNA and culture. And at the end of the day, obviously, also about finance and the underlying economics. So coming back to that spiral, there is a material relationship that you would like to take into consideration. And depending on where you are on the spiral, you deal with it in a different way. So what's the negative impact that your business, your organization has on the economy, the environment, the society? What's the risk that you see yourself exposed to coming from the environment, society, and the economy? And to what extent can you contribute to creating value in the economy, the environment, and society? Now, depending on where you are on that spiral, you either say, well, with respect to negative impact, you just ignore that. We don't care. While on the other area, you really want to contribute to zero contribute social ecological system degradation. From a risk perspective, it's basically about uncertainty in VUCA times, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous, disruptive times, where you don't know how to orientate yourself, while in the other field, you find clarity and to have a strategic approach and know where you would like to go. And when it comes to value creation, for those who are low there, that's a threat, because others who see the value that they can create, they're going to outcompete them. While if you really embrace that change, there is tremendous opportunities out there to really create new value and contribute positively and making a hell of a lot of money by saving our species on that planet. So to do all that, how am I from a time perspective? Okay, I'll manage. All right, so we came up with a process when working with organization, how to manage that transformation process, which we call advice. And I would like to quickly elaborate on that, because that might also give you some ideas and some thoughts on where you can contribute towards change and transformation. And the first one I skipped. It means Acer key stakeholders, and you have no clue what that means, but that's going to be my last slide. The next one is then diagnose your organization. So it's not just about to what extent are you violating the sustainability principles today, but what does also mean that these disruptive times that we're living in, what do they mean for your organization? How can this disruptive technologies really help you? It also will help you to make better decisions, what technologies to go for, how to use them, and also where to be careful with them. Is nanotechnology good or bad? Is AI good or bad? take guidance from understanding what social ecological success means, and you will find the proper answers. Now, based on that, you also want then to visualize your future. We already addressed that. And then based on that, what you want to do is a backcasting from sustainability principles, a backcasting from understanding what future fitness truly means, and start to innovate. Well, you will come up with tons of ideas. So you have to start to strategize. You want to ask yourself, what of the options that we have here? What's the pathway that we would like to take? And first of all, does it lead us in the right direction? Is it a flexible platform or is it a dead end? Can we move to the next step and to the next step? And last but not least, is there a return on investment who makes it worthwhile to take that step? These are the three minimum questions. There might be, of course, additional questions. And then you start to engage your transformation and move forward and learn along the way. And you will, at some point in time, very quickly realize that you will not be able to do that just on your own. You will have to collaborate with many others across the value chain, across the industries, across stakeholders. So I mentioned, again, that spiral, but it's actually pretty powerful. It can work a lot with that. So I mentioned the Acer part. And before I do that, I would like to introduce some other terminologies that we had to learn in a very painful way along the way. So while you just learned about those terms, which are more related to the maturity of an organization, you also find a similar way on individual level. And that is, when it comes to sustainability, and you would really like to work with people out there, there's some which we call the innocent. And it's like, we don't mean that in any negative way. It's like you want to teach a 6-year-old on higher mathematics, and then you blame the child that he or she doesn't get it. No, it's just innocent. They don't get it yet. But probably some of them are there who are never going to get it when it is about sustainability. The next one we call the ignorant, and they fall in two groups. The consciously ignorant, and my personal opinion is these are dangerous people because they know what is going on and they don't care. And then there are the others who are unconsciously ignorant but would have the potential to get what you're talking about. So let's work with these guys. Now, the next one we call, and that is not supposed to sound in any way incompetent, because we're all in that room. We are incompetent in certain areas, right? I don't know how to play golf. I never learned it so far. So I'm very incompetent when it comes to playing golf. So the incompetent, they would acknowledge what's currently going on there. But they say, oh, now we have COVID and we have Brexit, and now the whole issues going on with China and logistics and sustainability. Yes, yes, yes. And war for talents, all of that. They agree to all that, but they don't know how to handle that. They require complete different treatment and way work with them than compared to the next group, which we call the independent. They already are on the road. They embrace sustainability, but they still follow a reductionist approach. They don't necessarily apply whole system thinking and see that sometimes even with best intentions, they could do the wrong thing. And the last group, we call them the interdependents, great people to work with. They are on a different level. You collaborate, you share, how can we get the job done all together? And I hope, by the way, we all want to collaborate on whatever's going to happen out there, because that is what's needed. Now, that gets me to my funny Acer process. And Acer is something we came up with when we said, why does change happen? Why does it not happen? When does it happen? And what we would really like to see at the end of a process, and you can even transfer that to any change that you've experienced in your life, maybe change your diet, stop smoking, whatever that may be. What you would like to have at the end of the day is, what you would like to see observed is a response, the change in behavior. But for that to happen, something prior to that needs to happen. We call it embrace change. And that is usually related to either pain or gain. Either the pain has become so big that maybe the doctor said, well, great that you made it again here. That was now the third time. Next time, across the road, great, yeah, fantastic view. And that might just be the shock that you needed to embrace change. I wonder how many more shocks we need to embrace change. But also the gain, the positive thing, to see what we could achieve. I'm a big Star Trek fan, and so that's something of that. But if you would like to think about a vision of what humanity could achieve, that was the motivation of Gene Roddenberry, who invented Star Trek. So I know that was a side issue, but I had to place that. So, but for embrace to happen, which something before that needs to happen, that is comprehend. You need to have the proper education. You need to get what whole system thinking means, how sustainability is defined in that example. So, and before that, you need to become awake. You need to become aware. Something is going on. You don't know yet what it is, but you got to do something about that. Now, the thing here is there are so many people out there, you can rattle their cage as much as you want. They're not going to wake up in this life. Don't waste your valuable energy on them. But just because someone is awake doesn't mean that he or she really understood what you're talking about. Just because we understand that we have to do something doesn't mean that we embrace change. But the embrace part also needs to happen for us to respond and take the first of many, many steps to follow, which is then the advice process, DVISE process that I described later on. And that's my last slide, because that's, to put that all together, is 7 recommendations. Commit to a shared definition of sustainability and recognize that it is in your very own interest. Provide direction with a clear vision of success and long-term goals. Enhance education backed by science-based concepts and whole system thinking. Select a strategic sustainability framework. And there's one out there that has been there for 30 years. I discovered in 2012 and was just destroyed that I had to get that all to see it. And develop a roadmap for the way ahead. Develop your business case addressing risk, value creation, and impact. Think about triple materiality that I showed before. Unfold a leadership and innovation culture throughout the organization. And lastly, catalyze alignment and collaboration by ongoing stakeholder engagement, everyone out there. How much was I now over time? Was good, oder? Here we go. Done. So, and therefore I skip that part as well. Thank you. Thanks.
So let's call immediately 2 of these executives and professionals that were part of this survey that Edwin presented. Michaela from Bondalti, the former CUF Química, for those that don't know well yet this fantastic brand, more Latin. Michaela is in charge of strategy and sustainability and circular moves and all that. So please come on stage. And Anna from Symington. She has joined Symington recently, in charge of people, in charge of sustainability, innovation, and she's a member of the board. Anna, welcome. Anna Salome. Let me tell you that the fact that we have 2 ladies here speaking, assuming these key roles with sustainability is something that is very important to stress. I think that the woman element in organizations is key to transform this mindset. It's paradigm. Please, Edwin, and Edwin, please guide us through from the survey into questions. I remind us all that as we'll need to have some break, and that we have an amazing sequence of things. So let's keep at a short pace.
How much time do we now have, Antonio?
That
I'm
question
not gonna-
I don't want to answer immediately, but
Okay.
we don't have more than 15 minutes.
My apologies once more. How is sustainability guiding you and your organization? And looking back at the past 5 years, what has really changed? Anna.
Is this working? Yeah, it is. First of all, very happy to be here. I would like to congratulate Católica and Planeteers for the Insure Hub. Now to the question.
I think that most of all, sustainability and sustainability journey that we have been doing has been a catalyst for change. And it has been really, I think, a leverage in terms of our people-driven and purpose-driven transformation. I think that sustainability, and I'm very happy to see that we have been working most of the dimensions that you have identified in the study, of course, not perfectly, and we have lots of weaknesses still to deal with, but we have been working through a framework, and I think that's really important. Symington has been a B Corp since 2019, and it has been a very important achievement for us. And I think that based on that, we have been able to make adjustments. We have been tackling governance issues, vision, mission, and strategy also. We have been paying lots of attention to the purpose issue. Also, I think that people management has been adjusted, has been reviewed, so to say. Organizational design. Of course, there is also the ambition to be recognized by our clients, by our suppliers, as an institution that is really committed with the sustainability. And we have a motto that is for the next generation, which means that we want to deliver a better company for the next generation of the family, of course, the next generation of employees, the next generation of stakeholders and citizens and the world, let's say. So I think that sustainability has presented us with a very interesting journey and also a very demanding but very trustful framework to work with.
Or do
No,
you-
no, I know.
Thank you.
And we gained some time. Okay, thank you very much, Católica, for the invitation, and also Plantiers and Antonio and Edwin in particular. Bondalti, as Antonio referred, our name for the last century was CUF, and we are a chemical company, and we have more than 100 years, and we are the foundation of the José de Mel Group. And we have a huge legacy from our past linked to environmental thoughts and action, and about people and community. What was the past of our practice connecting community and people that work in our company. It's something that it's really important, and we feel that we need to take care for the future. But saying that, and I think we need to be clearly the way that companies and society and looking to the last 10 years, of course, the way of look to business changed a lot. And if I remember, and I study in Universidade Católica, and the way we learn and the way that society looked to the business was much more on shareholders' value than on stakeholders' value. And I think this was a big transformation looking to the last 10 or 5 years. And in Bondalti, it was also a big transformation. Now, and looking for the recent years, or we began that journey with you, with the new next future. Almost 10 years ago, we make a work, and we try to put the back, bringing the trends to what we could be in the future. And some of the result of this work it seems a little bit futuristic at the time. And it seems also that we have a lot of time to do it. And we saw now the time was much, it was shorter, and it's happening now, and we need to do it. And for the last 5 years, we put in our strategy people and planet, and we have 3 axes in our strategy. Of course, the economic one, but also the environment and the climate and people. And we act in all of the 3 axes together, and we plan and we act, and we listen to all the stakeholders, and we hear what are important for them, and we discuss that, and we put that also in our way of do things. And I think we make a big change in the way of manage business in the last years.
Then right away for you, Michaela, also the next question. What stood out for you from the participation in the study that we did with you on strategic leadership towards sustainability? Was there anything that stood out?
Yes, first of all, it was very nice to participate in the study. I think it's always useful for us because we learn something, and we have other perspective, and give us always something to put in the way we build our future. I think what surprised me most was to see that there are still so many companies that the action is more reactive, and in some cases also in a marketing perspective, to seem to be in the good way, not to be to done it exactly like that. And I think this was what surprised me most. And you in the study you refer a point that is some of the agenda, like United Nations goals and others. It's a support for us to make that journey. And indeed, in Bondalti, I think this was a relevant help for our journey, because it gives us an objective and help us to analyze how we could bring something to the bigger objective. And yes, I think I agree with your suggestion to take a look of that and put that in our work.
As you know, I haven't participated in the questionnaire and the survey, but reviewing it and seeing it through, I think that what surprises me the most is to see that still there is such inconsistency between some of the answers. Either people report but not measure. They say, and there are a certain amount of answers that really don't, that indicate that people are not working sustainability systematically. So the lack of systemic thinking, which we all know that is critical to really develop a sustainability strategy and proceed in a sustainability journey. But also, I was very happy to see that so many of us understand that sustainability is here to stay, despite the challenges, despite the obstacles, despite being difficult, despite being so important to prepare ourselves for some failures and for trying again, and sometimes for failing fast. And that was really nice to see. And also, I think that people understand that leadership is key. We need inspirational leaders tackling sustainability challenges and issues. We need people that are able to inspire others and that are ready and prone to commit, despite all despite all the difficulties and despite all of the challenges that we all face. And I think that when we find, and each time that we encounter and are able to find those kind of those leaders, then we have reasons to be optimistic about the future. We need people that are able to bring others to the table, to be inclusive, to be ready to speak out about what, not only about the successes that we are able to gather, but also about the failures, to develop a narrative that is really truthful. And I think that that's really something that will foster collaboration, that will foster the truth when we are talking about this, that will prevent us from the temptation of greenwashing and all of that. So it was nice to see that we are getting aware for the importance of sustainability issues. Yeah.
That you elaborated on already. Michaela, is there anything that will guide you further towards acceleration in the future?
I think our next path will, we are going, we put more and more this access in our strategy. And what I see is that this will bring a transformation of what we are now, because I think for this future, we need a transformation, and we need a transformation in companies, and we need a transformation in society. Because as I referred, when we buy something, we just look to the price or to the profitability, and in all of us, society, companies, and in a person level, we need to put all the factors that this product or this investment or this project will bring. And we are doing that in Bondalti, and I think we need to quickly do that in society. And also we know that we have a huge challenge, we as a whole, and we need new solutions. We need innovative solutions. We need new ways to have energy. We need new infrastructures. We need many things, and many times the purpose is not there, and there are short-term objectives, and we as a whole, I'm not talking about Bondalti, all need to do it together and work more closely with this purpose.
So I'm going to give you 30 seconds for that last answer. But for this particular audience that is here and that is watching online as well, do you have any final message or thought for them? Yes?
I think that myself, I'm not able to separate sustainability from innovation. I think that the two embrace themselves and only work together. So I think that we need to inspire ourselves. We need to aim for the moonshots that you were referring to a while ago. I think that we need to be courage and to tackle the difficult ones. And I think that's that. We have to go at the same time. I think that we need to go deeper and we need to go higher, which is not easy to do, of course, but I think it's worth it. Yeah.
Final words for you.
Act now. It's not to be in the future. It's happening now, and we need to act now. I think it's my message.
Thank you so much, both of you.
Thanks for having recovery so well from this presentation of the study that took longer. I will not take longer. I really thank you for all these testimonies that are absolutely key, because it are established companies that could, could continue with efficiency and all those things. But they are saying we need to innovate into new paradigms. So thanks a lot for your testimony. Please bring your teams, your stakeholders, all the value chains in which you are, try to guide them into circular moves, sustainable and regenerative moves. Let's have a break now. We need to have a short break. We would like you, I know that when you go outside to the sun, it will be very difficult to take you back. But I promise you that we have so amazing things about as we move from the year into an architecture about what is to be sustainable and regenerative, how to involve investors, how to then go and be regenerative. So please, let's take a short break, only, let's say, if possible, 10 to 15, not more than 15, okay, minutes.
Okay, so hello again. We are back for the second part. Let's start with a presentation by Tom Bergman about Future Fit Business as a navigation toolkit aligned with backcasting. So Tom Bergman is the head of corporate engagement at Future Fit Foundation, a zoologist based in London that has been leading the development of a science-based next generation tool to act as a compass and equip business leaders with an integrated set of business goals towards net zero impacts and positive pursuits. So hello, Tom. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you to everyone and the team for inviting me to speak this afternoon. What I want to do is very briefly introduce you to the Future Fit Business Benchmark, how it can be used as a tool for backcasting, specifically thinking about how businesses can think long-term about environmental and social issues and chart a course for them to be resilient in the 21st century. So where I want to start is with the future in mind. We're a charity, we're based in London, and everything that we do is focused and starts from the endpoint, what we define as a future fit society. And that's a society that is environmentally restorative, economically inclusive, and socially just. So everything that we do starts with this endpoint in mind. We have a set of 8 future fit properties. They're on the right-hand side. You can see those in blue, orange, and purple. And these really are the properties that we would expect to see in a future fit society. And these will probably come as no surprise to anyone in the auditorium today. Waste does not exist. Energy is renewable and available to all. And for those of you who have read about donut economics, Kate Raworth's economic theory, this is all about how we can manage our economy to be in that safe and just space for humanity. So everything that we do is around keeping businesses and society at large within that donut. So we work with large and small businesses to road test guidance and tools. And they give us feedback, and we've worked with businesses like The Body Shop, Maersk, Chanel, who help us test and ensure that what we create is fundamentally fit for their use. So we're not going off on our own kind of research solely and coming back with a solution. It's around collaboration with business as much as it is encouraging them to take robust action. So what do I mean when I talk about backcasting, and how does this differ from current approaches out there in the market? Well, for many of you who work within businesses, you may have undertaken a materiality assessment where you gather information from your different stakeholders based on what they think the priorities should be for the business. And you often start with a blank piece of paper and then start populating things, and you end up with a grid with some of the goals coming out as important. And what often ends up happening is a CEO or a senior leader might say, well, that one doesn't look too great over there. Let's bump it this way, or this one feels like it should be up there. And that's deeply problematic, because when we think about the challenges that we as a society face today, they're huge. And not only are they huge for people and planet, and the way that we do business has many negative impacts on people and planet, but actually as we transition towards a more sustainable economy, I think what we're seeing with net zero and the sustainable development goals is creating a lot of risks and opportunities for businesses that can actually really understand what these challenges are. Okay, so how is what we're suggesting different from that materiality assessment? Well, if you think about it, starting with a blank piece of paper is making your life very difficult. Okay, what we say is, let's start with a set of properties or goals, as I'll explain shortly, and that future vision. Where is it that we as a business want to get to? How does this align with a future fit society that is, as I said, environmentally restorative and socially just, and so on and so forth? Let's think about what a business should look like there. And then let's come back to the present and say, okay, where are we now? Undertake a baseline analysis to say, okay, which goals are we currently focused on? Where have we made most progress? And in effect, get a snapshot in time view of our position. And then from there, we can put in place creative solutions and decide on the priorities, all with that broader context in mind. So we're not guessing what the future is going to look like. We're saying, this is the future that we want. This is what our future business should look like. And here are the steps that we're going to take to get there. A nuanced view on it, but actually when you hand this to businesses, they feel really empowered. And going through these types of exercises, there's always something that they haven't considered or they've deprioritized for different reasons. So how can we put this into practice? Well, if you think about it, businesses have both negative and positive impacts on people and planet, and those impacts can be both direct and indirect. Okay, for a moment, I'm going to focus on the direct negative impacts. Okay, and in that future fit society, a future fit business has eliminated all of its own negative impacts. Okay, now we acknowledge that this is hugely ambitious, hugely challenging for businesses, but this should be the endpoint. Okay. And what we've created, and this is based on system science, so this is based on planetary boundaries, societal needs. So, it's based on that underlying science, and it says, okay, how do we take that negative impact, and how do we understand whether a particular business is doing well on these things or doing poorly on them? And what we've created is a set of 23 break-even goals. Each of these goals can be measured on a 0 to 100% scale. And it includes everything from energies from renewable sources, operations emit no greenhouse gases, all the way through to employees are paid at least a living wage. Okay, so this covers a broad range of environmental and social goals. And it also includes a set of goals that are labeled drivers at the bottom, which is really about how companies can influence more broadly through procurement, through their financial assets, and so on and so forth. Okay. So the really important thing to say is this is hugely ambitious, and there are very few, if any, businesses that can really say they're 100% on all 23 break-even goals. So one of the first exercises that we do, and that I alluded to on the previous slide, was we walked through kind of a prioritization exercise with them. Okay, which of these goals are you likely to be causing most harm on? Which of these goals do you have a solution for? And where's the disconnect between those two things? So fundamentally understanding where should I focus attention today? Okay. And it won't be on all 23. It might be, 6, 7, or 8, depending on the business, depending on what you're actually doing. Okay. So those are the 23 break-even goals. Okay. As I mentioned before, impacts can be both positive and negative. So let's focus on the positive side of things. Okay. We know that, getting to 100% on all 23 break-even goals is going to take, 5, 10, maybe even longer. Maybe take decades on some goals for some industries. So what can businesses do in the meantime to help accelerate that transition to a future fit society? Well, any business can create positive impact itself. Okay. It can amplify the positive impact of others, or it can help reduce the negative impact of others. Okay. All of these things actively accelerate that progress towards a future fit society. Okay. And what we have here are a set of 24 what we describe as positive pursuits. Okay. And look at these as more buckets of categories of activities that businesses can undertake. And actually, when you dig into this process and seek to focus in on the areas where a business can truly add value, you actually see that most businesses can only really focus on 1 or 2 of these goals. And that's completely fine. I think one of the challenges that we've got in this space, particularly when we think about the Sustainable Development Goals, is everyone wants to say, I hit all 24 positive pursuits or however many SDGs. And very rarely do businesses say, okay, what am I really good at? Where am I best placed to add value? And I'm going to focus there, because that's where the real opportunity for me to add value is. Okay. So you don't have to hit all 24. It's really about focusing in on the areas that are where you can contribute most. Okay. So I just put this slide up just to say that Future Fit is being used in a variety of ways across the world right now. It's being used by businesses large and small, from companies to banks to investors. And these are just some of the more recent examples. LD Pensions, a Danish pension fund, released the first Future Fit investment mandate. So their investment managers, they're a pension fund, their investment managers have to manage the fund with a view to the positive pursuits. Tourism Holdings Limited is a tourism company in New Zealand, and they integrated Future Fit into their integrated report. And finally, we've been working with the UN Global Compact to deliver a series of workshops on the SDGs, thinking about prioritization across those SDGs. And these are just a few examples. We've worked with a number of large businesses to go through, and stress test their current strategies and work through the actions that they should take. One example that I want to spend a little more time on is our work with Virgin Money. It's a UK headquartered bank. And what we've been working with them on is the Sustainable Business Coach. This is available in the App Store, on Apple, and also on Google Play. And you can download it for free today. But in effect, we've been working with Virgin Money to take the really comprehensive, deep guidance that's contained within the Future Fit Business Benchmark. And we've streamlined it into a questionnaire that takes somewhere between 30 minutes and an hour. And the problem that it was trying to solve is that Virgin Money has it's got a very large loan book. But what they were finding was that many of their particularly smaller companies were struggling to understand where they should focus their attention when it comes to environmental and social issues. Many of these were very small businesses, had very small teams. Many had a handful of people in their team. How could they begin to dig through the vast array of information that's out there? So we worked with Virgin Money to streamline this process down to create an app that all of their customers can go through, and it's actually open to any business in the UK to use. But they can go through this and understand out of the end of it, what actions can I take tomorrow to make progress on across these issues? Okay, and the tool is set up in kind of three parts. The first part is around prioritization. Okay, now this is all about understanding what types of activities the business is currently undertaking. Okay, is it a services business operating an office, or is it a mining business? And then based on those activities, and not the steps they've taken to mitigate their impacts, solely based on what activities they undertake, the tool then prioritizes across the 23 break-even goals, and then asks them a set of performance questions. So the second section of the tool is a set of performance questions, which is a set of yes/no answers to understand the progress a business has made towards mitigating their negative impacts. Okay. And then the third section then provides them with actionable guidance that says, okay, based on your performance questions, these are the types of actions that you should think about taking. And it points to other guidance, both on the tool and elsewhere, to help them learn more. Okay. And we've got fantastic feedback so far from the businesses that have used the tool. A lot of them have found it very thought-provoking in helping them understand issues that maybe they hadn't thought about before. But it's also creating a big opportunity for those businesses, because Virgin Money has tied the use of this tool to their sustainability-linked loans. Okay, so for businesses borrowing at least £250,000 and scoring a certain amount on the tool, their sustainability-linked loans will have no arrangement fees. And they've just started Virgin Money to roll this out, and they're hoping to build this out in the coming 12 to 18 months and get a larger proportion of their loan book using the tool and then receiving this discount. Okay. So I'm going to finish it there. We've got a discussion after this where we can dig more into some of these challenges. But just to say that our materials, the Future Fit Business Benchmark, is available freely on our website. You can go to futurefitbusiness.org and you can explore the guidance that we put together on the break-even goals and the positive pursuits. And we also have a community that you can sign up to where people are sharing information, we're asking questions and figuring out how we as a group of organizations can bring about change. So to summarize very, very briefly, I think businesses have a challenging time right now in prioritizing the positive and negative impacts that they should be focusing their attention on. I think the Future Fit Business Benchmark provides a way to begin thinking about the actions that can be taken today. And something like the Virgin Money Sustainable Business Coach can actually, help you, as a smaller business in particular, take steps in half an hour to an hour to understand where you're at. So I'll hand back to the panel. Happy to take questions as we go through, but thanks again for inviting me, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you so much for your presentation. And let's now move on to our panel. So it's a panel does, and I also have with me Sofia Santos. Thank you so much for being here. Sofia Santos is an economist with a specialization in sustainability and sustainable financing. Has 23 years of professional experience among banks, companies, NGOs, and the public sector. And since November 2019, she works as an agent of change in organizations, as a founder of the consultancy company Systemic. And since January 2020, she and her team are helping Grupo Crédito Agrícola to become a front runner in the sustainability field. So I will now like to raise, or to start by Let me point a first point regarding sustainable and regenerative financing instruments. And I'd like to ask some questions for Sophia. So let's start with you. So different countries across the world have adopted new initiatives aiming at a gradual transformation to greening their financial systems by responding their investments towards an inclusive net zero carbon and resilient economies. So according to the World Economic Forum, 4 to 5 trillion US investments will be needed until 2030. This raises the need for discussion about how to finance these projects, particularly in the context of a capital rationing. Under this framework, ESG ratings play a key role in the process of obtaining financing, particularly debt. In addition, we have a number of new players entering in the market with very relevant role, for example, in the certification process. So here, or based on this framework, I would like to raise two questions, which are, first, what are the main financing instruments available for companies to implement ESG investment strategies? And second, are banks prepared for all these changes, namely the application of ESG ratings?
Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here today. And your two questions are quite large in terms of answers. So once at a time, the first one is about what type of financial products there are available. So you can find in the market different products, from small loans for companies and for households to improve their energy efficiency. For instance, that in Portugal is quite often, or also some special loans to the purchase of different, more efficient vehicles. So I'm starting with these retailing type of services and type of products. But of course, then you can also find the green bonds, sustainable bonds, sustainability bonds, and all of that. Usually this green bond, it's probably from all of these three is the largest product that is being issued. I think this year has been quite a large increase in green bonds around the world. The number, it was about 3% of all bonds in the world, between 3 and 4% were green. And I've kind of heard and read some estimations that eventually this year will go up to 8 or eventually 10%, which is a great increase, despite the fact that it's still small. But green bonds, usually people think it's only for large companies, and it's not. It has started with large companies. In fact, it has started with governments and with municipalities. For instance, in the US, lots of the green bonds are issued by municipalities because they can. The biggest countries that issue green bonds are the US, China, and France, and then some other countries, which might sound like different, because many of us think that US and China don't do that much. But guess what? In terms of green bonds, they are, of course, they are large countries, but in terms of green bonds, they are also the largest issuers. Many people think green bonds is just for large companies, but I would like to take the opportunity to say that it is not. SMEs can also raise capital by doing green bonds. And by doing that, typically, they should get a ESG rating. And of course, that requires investment. I would encourage companies to see this as investments and not as costs. There are two different completely things. One is a cost, is a sunk cost. The other one is investment that will provide with increasing innovative and increasing prosperity in the company. And I think that's what we are talking about. Of course, there is also the green loans, a bit more sophisticated as well. It's a one-to-one, let's say one-to-one financial product approach, because it's when one company agrees with the bank for a loan, and the interest rate will vary according with the fact that if a company reaches a specific goal or not. So if a company sets up a goal, it's imagined to decrease 20% of CO2 emissions during year 1 and 2. If they do that, the interest rate is X. If they don't reach that, the interest rate is X plus Y. So this is something that I think in Portugal, only 1 or 2 large companies have done it. But then again, it's something that could be done more often. So, I mean, financial products are a bit sophisticated in terms of the green aspect, because are really related with the bonds, the most that we talk about. But the thing is that we should realize that green financial products are much more than just loans and bonds. It's also about how can banks help companies, especially SMEs, to get prepared to the great challenges that they are going to have in a very short time, because they have to reply. They will have to respond to lots of questions in terms of environmental and social data that is needed for investment funds. We also have regulation. I'm going to be quiet in a minute, but we also have quite strong regulation on private equity, for instance. So private equities will need to disclose information about environmental and social information on all their investees, and therefore companies, they will need to supply with that information. So sustainable finance is much more than just the green bonds that everyone seems to be obsessed, which is a great product, but it's very much about also how can we use and understand the level of sustainability, let's say, like this, of a company. And with that data, how can also the financial institution help them to move forward and to improve their environmental and social performance? This has been too long, so I'm
No, it's great. It's great. But let me just ask you another question regarding with the ESG ratings and if banks are in fact prepared for this change, because as we know, banks also have to, when analyzing, when performing some credit risk analysis, more than using the standard approaches, they also have to include ESG metrics in their analysis. And of course, that will also impact their risk, whether the risk-weighted average assets. So if you want, the capital ratio for the banks will be affected by this kind of loans, because if they are not providing loans to a firm that comply with the ESG criteria, that will, the capital ratio will be lower. So what do you think about this?
Well, this is a major, I think it's one of the major challenge for the banking sector. I think some banks will probably need to merge with others just because of this strong regulation, because this regulation is much stronger than the other type of regulations that banks have seen before. So, and this is actually different banks saying, it's not me stating. Many people say, well, if you take into account ADMIF, sorry, I'm saying the short expression in Portuguese, what we have in here with the taxonomy and with the EU regulation, it's much more demanding. So it is a massive challenge. If banks are prepared, some banks are better prepared than others, like always. So of course, I'm here representing the Credit Agrícola, so I'll of course I have to say what we have been doing. We have trying to be more prepared, but that implies a massive change of culture. It implies lots of training internal so that people become aware and with knowledge. It also implies a lot of resilience, because of course, no one really, we as human beings, we don't like change. We like to live in our comfort zone, and everything it's about sustainability, especially within the financial system, is all about being in a not comfortable zone. And special, it's all about having a position that is very different from the other people in the room. So, and that's a cultural change. So that's something that only with knowledge, that's why training is so important at all levels, not just training from the people that work in the bank, but also training of the clients and training of the suppliers. That's really relevant. And of course, we also try to understand better the level of ESG, let's say ESG rating of our clients. And therefore, we started to implement some questionnaires for every new loan that companies might ask in order to understand how can we be sure that we can help the clients to improve from one specific level of sustainability to a greater one. So if banks are prepared, generally I would say no, because this has been in the agenda for the at least last 20 years. Regulation is only out in the last 2, and many financial institutions are at the moment not in compliance with the regulations. So therefore, they never actually thought that this was going to happen, and it did. So now everyone is running. And I think all of us, we need to run very fast. And I think Credit Agricole is making a big effort to run faster and earlier than the others, of course.
Okay, great. Thank you. I will now move to another subject, and this is for Tom. So Tom, regarding the role of asset managers. So as investors, the way asset managers direct capital not only shapes the financial returns, but can also affect the type of impact we have on the world. So asset managers have the power to, in my opinion, to influence corporate behavior, mainly if they make their investment decisions based on ESG criteria. So in fact, there is more than just the relationship between risk and return. So a third dimension, impact risk, needs to be embedded into the investment process. So regarding your experience and even knowing that there is a new generation of asset managers, still the pioneers, who use strategic and systematic sustainability thinking for their evaluation of entities to support. So in this context, let me just raise 2 questions. First, has the relationship between these 2 outcomes evolved? And is there a fundamental shift in how companies are viewed and valued? And of course, based on your experience regarding the Future Fits experience on the ground, what do you think on this?
Great, thank you. Yeah, I think I agree with Sophia. There's a lot to unpack here, and I think that, you know, as with banks, I think there's a variety of different ways in which asset managers are stepping up to the challenge, and I think that's because, you know, there's diversity in the approaches that asset managers take to managing the capital. We have you know, a lot of institutions that are more passive in their approach. Others are more active in, you know, choosing the companies that they invest in. I'm here talking about specifically public equity primarily. So there's a real variety and scope of different approaches that the organizations are taking. You know, there are a number of institutions that, you know, focus more on those businesses that are offering, you know, sustainable opportunities that are relevant for the future, that are aligned with the SDGs, all the way through to organizations that, you know, are just, you know, solely screening out maybe oil and gas, tobacco and weapons, and calling that ESG as well. So there's a very broad breadth of how institutions are embedding ESG, environmental, social, governance factors into their investment decision making. I think one of the things that I've personally seen is a shift towards much deeper integration of environmental and social factors into company valuation. I think it's still very, very difficult to do that, and at that fundamental level, trying to understand, you know, cash flows and all these challenges, because I think we're stood on a precipice right now. If you look at, you know, the number of, you know, net zero commitments that have been made, if you look at how consumers and other customers are looking across environmental and social issues, I think a lot of these things are going to change very, very rapidly. I think there are going to be a number of businesses whose actual business activities are no longer going to be welcome in that world that we're all striving for. So how can you factor in such rapid change? That's a really difficult thing for investors to do. So I think the first trends that I've seen is attempts to at least go into that detail and try to incorporate these issues into that fundamental company analysis. I think the second trend that I've seen is really investment in stewardship and engagement. So active owners are really beginning to support and encourage businesses to kind of go above minimum standards so that they're not being hit by the forthcoming transition risks and so on and so forth. But acknowledging that changing from 0 to perfect right now just isn't feasible for the majority of companies. So I'll end it there. I think there's kind of a cliched response to the biggest challenge here that I think was coming out in Sophia's comments as well around data and information. I think that we as kind of a finance community right now are still a little too reliant on out of the box company ratings. And when you look at what the ratings that research managers are producing, they differ so wildly between each other. They're measuring different things. But also when you dig into an individual research manager, they're still finding it difficult to unpick the solutions of tomorrow from the problems of today. One example being there's a recent example of Beyond Meat, which is an alternative proteins company, where a research manager was saying that their rating was very similar between that company, which I view as part of the solution of the future, to one of the world's largest meat producers. And with all the disadvantages and the impacts of meat production. So I think we're still a little too reliant on those ratings, and I think asset managers have realized that and are now kind of deepening their engagement on these issues and trying to fundamentally understand where the company's adding value.
Sophia, and using one part of your discussion, it's about SMEs. And for sure, and for me and for us in Porto, is something that is really important. So knowing that in Europe, 80% of GDP contribution comes from SMEs, how can we influence the behavior of these firms? We know that it's much easier to analyze compliance with ethics criteria for listed companies. How can best practice be trickled down to SMEs? What do you think?
SMEs understand that money will be associated with ESG good practices. So I think that can be the first trigger. Not that I'm saying that SMEs, they are not concerned with anything else than the money. I'm just saying that they are usually very busy. I think Portuguese SMEs, they do wonderful things. I don't know how can they cope with the whole system and still export as much as they do. So what I'm trying to say is that the money will be related, the access to money will be related with ESG performance, not only on the banking side, as we can see now, Crédit Agricole already doing some kind of ranking to understand what is the level of ESG practices among the clients. For now, it's to understand, and later on, we will see what we can do with that data. But also banks will need to report in 2024 the green asset ratio, which means the percentage of loans that it's aligned with the EU taxonomy, which means the percentage of loans that it's aligned with the 6 environmental goals and potential with some other social goals that are about to come out, which means that the capital requirements will be related with the level of environmental and later on social risk of a bank. And this is already in 2022, in July 2022, the capital requirement directive will change, will be updated, and banks will have to incorporate ESG issues on their credit analysis, which means that any SME, sooner or later, when it starts to engage with the bank will need to ask some questions. Another thing is the finance that is coming from the European community. Also, more than the majority of the funds will be targeted at projects that can prove that they contribute to the carbonization or circular economy. So once again, the projects themselves, they need to comply with that. And even this recovery package, it needs to be compliant with the taxonomy. So all the money that this recovery, how is the name in Portuguese? The Resilience Recovery Plan. All this money should not significantly damage any of the 6 environmental goals that European Commission has defined in the taxonomy. Okay, so that is really critical. So how can SMEs go for it? I think there is no other way. And it's not that complicated. And that's another thing that I would like to demystify, is that sometimes I hear people in the sustainability area saying, well, I think SMEs, the Portuguese SMEs are still very, what should I say, not able to deal with sustainability issues. And I just don't agree, because if they are able to export in such a terrific and difficult environment, of course they are able to identify and to communicate the social and environmental information that banks and that investment funds and that the government will be asking. And then they will be able to improve, because they have done it in other areas. Why shouldn't they not be able to do it in sustainability? So just to finalize, how can we should explain this more to the SMEs. Most of the SMEs, they don't know that they have this short future in front of them. And when they do, they recognize it. Sometimes I do training to SMEs in their meals, which is wonderful. And I can see the positive response, because I can already feel that clients are asking for this information. Some investors are also wanting to know what the best practices are. But this information needs to be much more mainstreaming towards every single SME, because the only problem we have is that most of the SMEs don't know about this. If they knew, they will understand that it's reasonable and that makes sense.
Right. Right. Yeah. Thank you so much for your opinion. Thank you so much, Tom, for being with us. This was, and I think that it would be a very interesting topic. We should discuss this further in the next minutes. So thank you so much. And we'll now move to the next panel. Yes.
Está? I call the attention to our production team that we are going to bypass one point on the sequence. We were going now to speak about EU fund, EU, the EU Green Deal, and all these very important, goals, and bigger targets, bigger pressures from the EU to transform all Europe and to lead the world with sustainability. But so we are changing the order, because we have a speaker in the US that was going to speak after João Cortés, and we need to bring him on board, because there are some time limits on the US side. So we are going to bring in, if possible, if he is online there already, John Fullerton. Please let me know if that is possible. Yes? Hi. Oh, yes. John, we made some change here to be able to get you on board sooner, okay? To explain, because we were a bit out of time. And so we are bringing you now to speak about regenerative business. And it would be very interesting to hear about the experience of John Fullerton. And hopefully then we'll have some dialogue, because one of the big surprises of this afternoon is that Gunther Pauli, one of the founders of circular economy, has arrived could arrive on time on his plane. So we have him here. It's an honor also, and to have some dialogue and some commentary about also regenerative business by Gunther, and to have a bit of dialogue. So let's start with John.
Well, thanks very much, and I appreciate the flexibility on the timing. I apologize, but I do have another commitment that starts at the top of the hour. I was able to listen in on the last half of the last discussion, and it's very encouraging to hear, in a sense, the rubber starting to meet the road. I think Europe is ahead of the US on all that, I must say. So that's encouraging to see. What I would like to share is, in a sense, a glimpse at where I think we're heading, and or where we need to head. And just to give you all a little bit of context as to, in a sense, who's saying this. You know, my background is in big finance. I spent nearly 20 years at what I always like to call the old JP Morgan before leaving in 2001. I came up through primarily the capital markets derivatives business, but then the last few years focused on venture capital and private equity. And since then, I've become what we now call an impact investor. I tend to focus on food and agriculture primarily, but many other things. But my real passion is this thorny question of the future of economics, the future of capitalism, the economic system design that we will need to migrate to if we are to not break the planet and destroy all that we hold dear, and do it in a way that is equitable and just to the people that are now part of the human race. And I'd have to say that my work tends to be, you know, very challenging to people. It's very much out of the box thinking. It's very much unconventional, non-incremental. And so I ask everyone to bear with me as I walk you through this learning journey I've been on, and withhold judgment on whether this fits into your thinking and whether this is right or wrong. We're all trying to figure this out, but this is a perspective that does come as a result of a now more than 10-year search for answers to very, very difficult questions if we are to be honest about the challenges we face. So I'm going to share screen and go through a few slides rather quickly so we can get into discussion. Bear with me. Is that working or not yet? Put that on. I think I see it. There we go. Does that look right? I can't see anyone, so I'm hoping it does. The first thing I'd like to say is that I think we're trapped in a perception created by the theories, particularly of economics, but more broadly than that. And so we actually can't see outside of the limitations of our current world paradigm. And well, someone's sending me a chat. Let me make sure this is, okay, good, thank you. And I'd like to suggest that this has happened before. We actually used to operate in a Earth-centered worldview. The idea that the planet was the center of the universe and the sun and the other stars rotated around the Earth. And it was literally thousands of years that the astronomers were proposing theories or fixes to the glitches that they saw as to why planets would sort of rotate around and then reverse course and then keep going. And it wasn't until Copernicus came along and suggested that no, the Earth is not the center of the universe. The sun is the center of our world, and the Earth is rotating around the sun. And the field of economics, and this is no criticism of economists, because we've all been, we've essentially inherited the history of the economics profession. But economics, and if I had more time, I could go into this in detail, but economics was built, the neoclassical economics, which is the current foundational economic thinking that's taught in our universities and is the foundation of political economy thinking, whether it's the liberal version or the conservative version, is literally built on a foundation of Newtonian physics. And there's all kinds of problems with that. And one example of where that has led us is that literally 3 years ago now, the Nobel Prize in economics, which is not actually a legitimate Nobel Prize, but the Nobel Prize in economics was awarded to William Nordhaus for his model that suggested that the optimal global warming we shoot for is 3.5 degrees Celsius. And this was in the face of our understanding from the IPCC and the World Climate Science industry, if you will, that 3.5 degrees is an absolute disaster. But the economics profession somehow was so obsessed with the idea that economic growth is the path to our prosperity, they couldn't fathom the possibility that you had to question exponential economic growth, despite the fact that we live on a finite planet. So the idea of regenerative economics begins with a search for an alternative worldview about what economics really is that can deal with the precipice that we find ourselves on today. And when I started giving these talks, I used to have to explain why we're on a precipice, but obviously that's no longer necessary. So the first kind of big idea I'd like to share, or at least propose to us all here, is that the shift we're now facing, the changes we're facing, the challenges we're facing are nothing short of a shift in era, similar to the shift from medieval period to the modern era. And we have a whole new worldview. The modern era introduced the idea that the universe and the world is a machine, and we could break the machine down into its parts and understand the parts. This was the result of the scientific method and the scientific revolution, which obviously created all kinds of great advances. But we've now reached the limits of this reductionist clockwork universe worldview. And we're emerging into what many are now calling an integral era, where the metaphor or the model is a web or an ecosystem as opposed to a machine. And this is new. No one living today has ever experienced this. And so no surprise that it's very unsettling. But a little bit about how the universe actually is organized. This comes from the latest scientific understanding of complexity science. Unlike classical physics, which again, economics has its roots built on, and classical physics is largely around single cause and effect descriptions in the physical world. Most of the world is actually comprised of wholes, and wholes are intertwined and interconnected, such as, for example, the whole of a family is comprised of the wholes of the individual people in that family, or the whole of a business is comprised of the different business units in the business. And these are all interconnected in a very complicated way, and in fact, in a complex way. But in economics, we use statistics, which has the assumption of disconnected causes to explain the uncertainty that economists know exists. And so that's essentially combining an inaccurate approach to mathematical uncertainty with an outdated understanding of physical laws to come up with our modern economics. And it's simply not consistent with our genuine understanding of how the world actually works, which is this interconnected, complex whole, which despite the complexity produces exquisite order. And we see that throughout the natural world. And I would suggest that the human economy is part of the natural world. It's made of human beings. It's embedded in what we call nature, what we call the biosphere. And for it to be sustainable, like other living systems in the natural world, the premise is that it will need to follow the same patterns and principles of other living systems. Now, I first wrote about this in 2015. It's building on the ideas of many. but it really introduced, I think, into the conversation this idea of a regenerative economy and what that would need to look like. And I believe this shift from reductionist thinking to holistic thinking is not limited to economics and finance by any means. It's actually cropping up everywhere, from agriculture to education. You know, we think of transdisciplinary education. It's very vibrant now in healthcare, the idea of integrated medicine. And then, yes, it will impact the world of business and banking, even though the current response to the environmental crises and the social issues are not yet regenerative. They're more incremental change from within the existing paradigm. So a quick definition: regenerative economics is the application of nature's laws and patterns of systemic health, self-organization, self-renewal, and regenerative vitality to our socioeconomic systems. And this really, I believe, is the next evolution of our economics thinking, similar to the astronomers in the old days. Much of the advances in our economics have been patches to the fundamental flaw of neoclassical economics. And even ecological economics, which I have a huge amount of respect for and am a student of, concludes that since scale matters, we need to put limits to the growth of the metabolism of the economy. That is certainly true, but without a reference to living systems principles, the conclusion of limiting growth becomes quite pessimistic. And we all understand that if we shrink our economies, all kinds of bad things happen. And the promise of regenerative economics is that there's all kinds of currently hidden, but very real potential that's waiting to be unlocked if we can align the system with the same patterns and principles that describe other living systems. And I've seen that in my own investment practice, so I know it's real on a micro scale. And the question and the challenge for all of us is how to manifest that across something as large and complex as the global economy. Drawing on one of my teachers, Bill Reed's beautiful diagram, just to place regeneration in the context of the sustainability conversation, the important thing to take away from this visual is that regenerative behavior over on the right is the result of the regenerative process. And if we want to have a sustainable economy, we need to run the economy in accordance with living systems design, following the regenerative process, and then sustainability will be the outcome. Much of the sustainability conversation in business and in finance is naturally, and this is not a criticism, it's the logical thing to do, is trying to move from our degenerative model over on the left incrementally towards this sustainability objective. But as the analogy I would say is, it's like climbing Mount Everest. Every step we take towards sustainability, the next step only gets harder. And eventually we'll find that we can't reach it. What we need to do is flip into a regenerative mindset where we unlock this currently hidden potential that is the opportunity to create wealth, creates prosperity, create well-being in new ways that we currently don't see because we're trapped in this degenerative design. Now, in the paper, I talk about 8 principles. They're just my best effort to reduce, and again, in a reductionist way, the complexity of living systems to a finite number that we can use to communicate. I won't go through them each here, but I'll just make a couple of points. The first one being, one of these is the idea of right relationships, symbiotic relationship, reciprocal relationships. All living systems have healthy relationships of reciprocity. And if you think about the entire financial system, if it looks at the world through its sort of finance lens, it sees the economy as a vehicle to optimize the returns on capital through. And the economy uses the planet, natural resources, human resources, combines them together into business enterprises in such a way as to optimize the return to capital. Now, I'm a finance person. This is what I used to do for a living. Not because I'm a bad person, that's because the way we've designed the system. But of course, if we understand that living systems need to be in right relationship, the whole here, the higher level whole, is the planet, the biosphere. The economy sits within, is embedded in the planet, and finance needs to be understood as a subsystem of the real economy. And like all subsystems of all other healthy systems in the universe, it needs to work in such a way as to support the health of the real economy. Now, another one of the principles is balance. We know from yoga that balance is a secret to our vitality. It turns out through the rigorous study of real living systems, they also balance what we call efficiency and resiliency. Now, isn't that interesting that living systems seek to balance efficiency with resiliency, and yet our economics profession and our economics worldview suggests that we should always pursue efficiency. And the global supply chain crisis we're seeing right now is the consequence of the endless pursuit of efficiency at the cost of resiliency. And you see that it's not a sustainable system. Same thing happened several decades ago when we had the financial crisis. We on Wall Street were in the pursuit of efficiency, and yet the financial system became very, very brittle and collapsed. Now, I talk a lot about the financial system and applying these 8 principles in a second book I wrote back in 2019. Both of them are available on our website. And I again tried to lay the current sustainable finance conversation and products and activities on the same spectrum, where on the left, it's conventional degenerative finance activity and moving toward ESG, engaged ESG, much better than ESG. Green bonds that you just heard about are where we can kind of flip from the degenerative state to a regenerative state, particularly green bonds that are financing projects that otherwise wouldn't get financed on the balance sheets of companies. And then there's a whole new world off to the right, which doesn't really exist yet, but I think the next 10 years we'll see all kinds of innovations and different ways to think about the role of capital in a truly sustainable economic system. Now, how do we apply this to business? I'm sure Gunter is going to share, he's got a personal Rolodex of projects and experiences that he'll be able to share with you in person. So let me focus a little bit on perhaps how to apply this in the large business sector, multinationals. How would this apply to multinationals? Well, the first thing I would say is we need to begin with the 8 principles and use them as our compass. Those should inform our culture, the purpose of an organization, its behaviors, how it preserves its own health. But there's also governance and capital structure, business models before you get to products and services. And unfortunately, we naturally start with the products and services, but we miss all these other pieces. And to be a truly regenerative company, all of these are going to need to be aligned with the 8 principles of healthy living systems. And again, to emphasize, they don't need to be my definition of living systems principles. It's literally impossible to describe the complexity of living systems with 8 principles. But these have proven to be an accurate place to start. The maps that we need to draw for each individual organization are going to be unique to that organization. But the compass, I would suggest, the principles are what remain constant. Now, let's see how this shows up in the real world. Well, there's a huge focus now, obviously, on cows and meat being a problem. But I would question, is it really the cows that are a problem, or is it the business model of the industrial meat industry? Just as a little interesting fact, in the United States, there used to be more buffalo roaming across the plains than we currently have cows in this country. And we didn't have climate change back when the buffalo were roaming. So it's not as simple as, well, cows fart and therefore we need to eat less cows. It turns out it's actually the business model. The industrial feedlot system is what is the disaster from an ecological perspective as well as a health perspective. And I'm all for people choosing to be vegans, but we should do that with an informed understanding of the important relationship, again, one of the first principles, the relationship between large herbivores and their internal digestion system and how it plays on the world's grasslands. Now, why is this important? The grasslands are the second largest carbon sink after the oceans, more significant than the forests. The photograph you're looking at on the right has cattle managed holistically in a symbiotic relationship, similar to the way the buffalo roamed. The photograph to the left of the fence line is conventional approach to managing cattle. It doesn't take a PhD in climate science to understand that the healthy grass on the right, which sequesters carbon through its root systems, is going to be a much healthier impact on the planet than what we have on the left. And the data actually shows this. You can see white oak pastures there on the left actually is a net carbon sequesterer, even though it's producing beef, hogs, and chickens. And the conventional beef industry, of course, all the way on the left is the worst of all. But even the plant-based meat alternatives are carbon emitters, whereas holistically planned grazed cattle actually, including their gas, become net carbon sinks if managed holistically. So the issue is not cows, the issue is management. And the only way we see that is if we get clear on what the principles are. In that case, the principle of right relationship between herbivores and the world's grasslands in particular, but all of the principles need to apply. Now, last year, the CEO of Walmart announced that Walmart had an intention to become a regenerative company. And their definition was one that works to restore, renew, and replenish in addition to preserving our planet. Now, there are many, many challenges for a company like Walmart to truly become regenerative, because regenerative doesn't just apply to the natural world or nature, it applies to the communities in which it lives and the employees of the company as well. And I'll just leave it at that for the purpose of time today. Now, Google's an interesting example. I would suggest that the technology or the product of search is potentially one of the most regenerative innovations, certainly in our lifetime. The principle that it in particular highlights is the principle called robust circulation. A healthy living system has a metabolism. And what we now call the circular economy is actually metabolizing economy. And it applies not just to materials and energy, which is the way we think about it in circular economy world, but it applies to information and empathy as well. And what better way to enhance and accelerate exponentially the circulation of information than the innovation of search? The problem with Google is that Silicon Valley enforced on it an extractive, reductionist, conventional business model, which is to essentially extract data and optimize advertising sales. And optimizing advertising sales to enhance, to grow consumption. Consumption literally means to destroy, is a business model that takes a brilliant innovation, regenerative innovation, and turns it into a degenerative business model. Now, what about banking and finance? I recently gave a talk in Egypt, and we had an interesting discussion about Islamic banking. One of the features, as many of you may know, about Islamic banking is that speculation is prohibited. Now let's think about speculation. By definition, speculating is a win-lose proposition. There's no symbiotic win-win relationship between speculators. And so the relationship between investors and the enterprises that they invest in has been destroyed. And we see very unhealthy consequences of our super speculative financial market. Well, now, rather than arguing that speculation is a bad thing or an evil thing, we just look to the principles and say, well, it's not aligned with the principles of living systems. Well, it turns out in Islamic banking, when you eliminate speculation from the financial sector, the capital tends to flow into small, medium, and large real economy enterprises, and all kinds of good things happen as a result. So I would suggest that using the principles as our guide should dictate how we rethink about how to regulate the financial sector in such a way that we're not just chasing yesterday's problem, but we're actually designing into the system a structure that will support the regenerative vitality of the economy, not just the financial system. I've gone through this entire talk and I haven't mentioned a word about ESG or metrics or impact metrics or anything. And that's by design. If we don't get clear on the regenerative process and manage to design our economy and our financial system such that we align ourselves with the regenerative process, we're going to be measuring the wrong things. And that's maybe something we can discuss after I'm done. And finally, just a quick comment on cryptocurrency and all the craziness that's happening now. I actually see this as a very hopeful possibility. I am not a fan of Bitcoin. I liken Bitcoin, I use an analogy, Bitcoin is to the cryptosphere what pornography was to the internet when the internet first came around. But the next generations of cryptocurrency show tremendous potential to wire into our financial system the alignment with the 8 principles or living systems principles. And so I believe we're currently moving from traditional finance, but we're essentially morphing it onto this decentralized technology platform on the blockchain and going to recreate many of the same problems, and in fact, many of the same problems on steroids on this decentralized platform. But already in the works, and I'm already involved in really interesting conversations around this, there is the possibility of coding into currency the behaviors, the incentives that we want that will actually align our money systems with what's required of a regenerative economy. So in summary, I would say economics is built on a flawed foundation. We need to shift to a living systems worldview. Economics is applied ecology. It's not its own science. Finance is a subsystem of the real economy and must be in service to the health of the whole being the real economy. We need to get clear on your universal patterns and principles of living systems. This will provide a reliable compass, and we need a reliable compass because we are lost. Regenerative process unleashes unseen potential. It's the regenerative process that unleashes unseen potential. And finally, regenerative potential is the source of our shared prosperity in our now full world. And a final quote from one of my favorite teachers, Bucky Fuller, who wrote in his final book that was published the year he died. He says, "Nature is a totally efficient, self-regenerating system. If we discover the laws that govern this system and live synergistically within them, sustainability will follow and humankind will be a success." And what was fascinating for me is I read that book after I published my own paper. So it was very comforting to know that I'm on the track of people who've come before me and are frankly much wiser than I am. And that's hopefully some good fodder for discussion.
Thanks a lot, John. Thanks a lot. This is a whole series of managing within limits, bringing businesses on board. So trying to be really at least for no negative impact, then moving, then, opening again, going deeper, going for more, for regeneration, for recovering the planet and society, the two. As we have this opportunity, this amazing opportunity to have also Gunther Poli with us. Is going to speak later, but many of you are not going to be there. So I thought it was a very good opportunity to have you entering for a moment and having some comments and a bit of dialogue. Of course, we have limited time, but so John, please keep some minutes for us to have some comment from Gunther. And then to have here a small dialogue.
John, good to see you.
Hi, Gunther. Nice to see you.
Last time was in Colorado. It's about time you come over here again.
They let me in an airplane again. It's about time.
Well, let me sit down. I don't want to talk like a professor. You know, the advantage is that John and I were both members of the Club of Rome. And I have been working since, well, 1979 with the Club of Rome. And at one point in time, John, I loved the work of the original teams with their analyses, the first reports to the Club of Rome, the second, and all the reports that came later. But in the origin, the Club of Rome was a think tank and a do tank. So the Club of Rome was in the very beginning a center of action, action in geopolitics, action in business development, action in investments, action in so many projects that it was really a hotbed of initiatives. And at the same time, it was this producer of report after report, where I would like to remind the audience that probably the most important report that I've read from the Club of Rome was the report called No Limits to Learning. It was an amazing report, which was headed by Mahdi El-Manjra, the Moroccan really visionary Jim Botkin, who at the time was at Harvard University, and a very strange Romanian ambassador who was also involved. But what I think is important is the following. As we have gone on, Club of Rome and many other institutes, I have come to the conclusion about 15 years ago, at about the same time as Hunter Lovin started to have her doubts as well. And we had good discussions with Hunter Lovins, also a member of the Club of Rome. And I would like to summarize it with two words: analysis, paralysis. We're paralyzed because we got so much to analyze and so much to do, we don't get any more to the action. And this is a very important thing because business needs to pass on to action. Business cannot satisfy itself as a Club of Rome or as any other non-value generating cash institution. It cannot permit itself to only do the analysis. It cannot permit itself to go to paralysis. And therefore, what I think is very important is what are the new frameworks that allow us to progress to action? And John, you're making a very important contribution in that line. I mean, your institute is really helping us to see how we can get to that regenerative. The regenerative has to be our central word. Now, I would like to just make a few observations. And one of them I would like to add, John, in the kind of work that we're doing. Let me summarize that when I wrote my report to the Club of Rome in 2009, I proposed that 100 technologies would really turn the planet around. Today, I'm at 204 technologies. The world is creative, innovative, and always finding new things. But some of these innovations, Antonio, they need 20 years to come to fruition. That means I need in the finance world what I call legacy investors. Investors who see the legacy. I give you a concrete example. In 1993, we analyzed the paper market and realized that with the growth of paper demand in China, particularly for packaging, as is the case today, more than ever before, we were going to put enormous stress on water resources in China. Because producing paper means having water. So in 1994, we launched a challenge. Would it be possible to make paper without water? Now, of course, you don't ask that question to the paper industry, because anyone who knows anything about paper says, you're nuts. It's the way it's been done all the time. It took us 1 year to get the prototype of paper in place, but it took us 17 years to make the machines that were able to crunch out 240,000 tons per plant. Now, how many investors do we have today that for a game-changing product and process, whereby we're able to use waste from the mines, the dust from the mines that is causing asthma, how can we find the investors that hang in for 18 years? I wish you good luck. Out of all the impact funds that I have last 2 years searched through, 4 out of the more than 500 we found would be willing to consider the file. Consider the file. So what I'm saying, John, if we really want to go for a regenerative economy, we're in need of a very unique new investor class, and it's not called impact investing. It's called legacy investing. And who are my legacy investors? Because I have funded several of our projects over all these years, and they're family offices. So we need to sit down with family offices, not the VC guys, not the impact fund guys, not even the Rothschilds and none of those. You need to sit down with family offices. And my experience is that the family office, particularly when they're in a generation change, when the grandfather is ready to hand over to this extraordinary granddaughter, he's willing to give her 5% right away to start playing with. And what is she going to do when she's 25? She's going to make investments where she thinks that when she's 50, she has made a difference in the world. And I think the concept of the legacy investor is one very important one. And the second one that I would just like for the debate add here is the absolute necessity to go beyond discounted cash flow analysis. You know, I have gone as far in my organization, when we analyze investments, it is prohibited to come with an Excel spreadsheet. You go with an Excel spreadsheet, you're out. I'm not considering it. Why? Because you're in a self-fulfilling prophecy. You play a little bit, you know, you can even download them all from the internet. I don't want to see an Excel spreadsheet. I don't want to see a discounted cash flow analysis. And I go back, John, to what probably you learned in your first moments with the Club of Rome as well, Jay Forrester's modeling. The systems modeling developed at MIT, downloadable free of charge on the internet today. And that modeling is what allows me to see a few parameters. One, my impact, as you're describing, John, so eloquently, my impact on my whole environment. How am I having an impact if I'm in paper making? How can I improve mining? How can I improve health? How I can improve water? I need to see the chain. I need to know what is the domino effect that I didn't know I was having, so that you don't have the unintended consequences. But the second, more important, is what you refer to, John, with these incredible opportunities that you're seeing. When you operate a systemic model, you will have feedback loops and multiplier effects. Now that makes it very interesting, because if you have multiplier effects, you can have an impact, regenerative impact on your environment and on your cash flow in your business that goes beyond what you expected. That makes it interesting, because the multiplier effect is what actually changes the business model. Now, a multiplier effect works very good in a local territory, say Porto. It doesn't work very well when you look at the global model. So this means that this modeling allows you to really see the impact in your local territory. Very attractive. And if you link this with the legacy investment, you have a very powerful tool to design growth and development sustainably with innovations in your economy. Thank you.
Let's have the opportunity for John Fullerton to comment.
Well, it's always great to listen to Gunter. He's got more stories than the entire Club of Rome combined, I think, given the energy that he's been at this and how long he's been at it. One thought I would do is just to make concrete his point about the feedback loops and the impacts that regenerative potential can unleash. There's a fascinating project I'm involved in that begins with tilapia, a tilapia hatchery. And tilapia is a fish that has been largely screwed up through bad practice primarily in Southeast Asia. But the cool thing about tilapia is it's a grass-eating fish. So if we could displace chicken, hog, and meat consumption with a protein that actually eats grass, you create this feedback loop for creating demand for farmers to grow grass to be turned into pellets to feed fish. And the fish can be grown on land. They can be farmed in a very safe way using a circular system where the waste from the fish then feed a shrimp tank, and the waste from the shrimp feed a mollusk tank, and the waste from that actually can go into a greenhouse. But the key to it is not that that's a efficient way to grow protein, which it is, and therefore should be profitable, but that it generates systemic demand for grass rather than systemic demand for corn and soybeans, which is what the chicken, the poultry, and the cattle industry do. And you know, again, not to be a one-trick pony here, but revitalizing the grasslands on this planet is one of the many top priorities. If you look at Paul Hawkins' work, you know, the grasslands as a natural carbon sink is critically important. And we can manage the grasslands in a way that's profitable for our human economy as well as healthy for the ecology. And so if we could do in the tilapia industry what's happened in the chicken industry, only without the compass, and make it as efficient and profitable, but to do it in a way that's systemically healthy rather than systemically destructive, then we're really talking. And this to me is why the urge for action, we all have an urge for action, but if we start running, but in the wrong direction because we're using the wrong compass, we actually lose the critical time we need. And I would argue that the entire sustainable finance industry, and it is now an industry, we've invested, 25 years pursuing a number of initiatives without our compass. And a lot of that time and energy has been wasted. And we would have been a lot better off focusing on the issue like Gunter just mentioned. The thing about you're a legacy investor, Gunter, is that those investors are forging a vital relationship with the enterprise that they are investing in. They're not speculating in securities. They're not trading in securities. They're not investing in some index that's going to perform the way some other index performs. They're actually in a relationship with enterprise. And those reciprocal relationships are a fundamental quality of all healthy living systems. So I would argue that not just family offices, but pension funds, and in particular sovereign wealth funds, need to behave in such a way that they engage with enterprise in a healthy long-term relationship. I'll leave it at that.
I have met with many pension funds, and they invite me to come and talk to them, and I speak to them, and at the end they say, what you're doing is great, but we will never be allowed to invest in any of your projects. We'll never be allowed. So we have a regulatory framework that needs to be dealt with, and there is only one country, and I'm sorry, I'm going to mention one country where this is not a problem. When I was in China, and I talked about the breakthrough of our stone paper, our paper made from waste from the mines. and China consumes 100 million tons a year. Immediately, the deputy minister made a calculation about the water. And he said, oh, if that's the case, we shouldn't have built the Three Gorges Dam. And he immediately said, but that's built. But it means we don't have to build the next one. And we've just scrapped a $18 billion investment project. So how much was the first million tons that you needed? I said, 1 billion. He said, oh, that's a great deal. And 1 billion was allocated. Now, how often do you raise 1 billion in one meeting? I mean, it doesn't happen every day, huh? So what is happening is that we have one country where we can say what we want about the country. But the fact that we're taking dust out of the air, reducing asthma risks, cleaning up the errors of the past, and generating paper that can be recycled forever, the Chinese say, let's invest, period. Why? Because it's directly contributing to the health of the nation and the restoration of the nation, and it's building up a new paper industry. I would like you to leave you with a guess. What's the second country that decided now to put up 8 plants of stone paper? 8. Not Taiwan. Not Taiwan. Morocco. They have a king with a vision. Period. The king listens to this. He sees that their biggest export is OCP's phosphates. He sees the mountains that they're creating with all the dust. He sees that his fruit and vegetable business exporting to Europe has to import 400,000 tons of cardboard from Europe to package it. So what do you think is the size of the first plant in Morocco? 400,000 tons. Let's get rid of the import of water, because Morocco doesn't consider the import of cardboard, but the import of water. And they eradicate the water from the equation. They transform their resource that is worth nothing in something, and here we go for a regenerative economy. But the blunt decision is made by one person. And I think for many of these blunt decisions, we need a few persons with vision. Does Porto have them? Thank you.
You are also short of time. This was amazing dialogue. Very, very happy to see it. Is this opportunities that sometimes happen when we are not expecting. So many times, many thanks to John Fullerton and to Gunther Polly, not only because of this opportunity, but also for a continued dialogue with us, continuously trusting that we are trying to do something. We started 1 year ago. We had Gunther in, we had John in at Altice Arena against all odds and against COVID, when it was almost impossible 1 year ago. Well, we were then 2 months later, we were record holders in COVID, okay, cases, and world record holders. But we did it. And it has been a big pleasure. I would only make a comment, a very short comment on what Gunther was saying about the territory. Let me tell you, you are here. We started with an international event. You are today in a territory, and you are here with an entity that is like a symbol of this territory, a territory that is in the north of Portugal, with a lot of connections also with the northwest of Iberia. And we are having even Iberian people coming in. and starting the conversation. And so let me stress that we not only fully agree, but we want to put this in practice. And we fully count on you both, John Fullerton, Capital Institute, Gunter Poli, Zeri, for all your wise support, your networks, because we want to connect into co-creation. Many, many thanks, John.
Thank
Many,
you.
many thanks.
Look forward to it. Bye all.
Bye, John. Thank you. Let's now have Manuela introducing the next guests. And this is really about something to show that the transformation, the disruptive innovation is already at work here in Porto, here at Católica, here at the Hub, in this amazing dialogue between Porto and San Francisco. Manuela, the stage is yours.
Okay, there. So it's a pleasure for me to present John Mello. John Mello, at the moment, also a friend, I would say, but John is CEO of Emirates Biotechnologies, a world leader company in biotechnology. And previously he was the president of USA BP Fuels, so where he was leading a completely different business in major oil marketing. And behind, he was the director of Ernst Young in San Jose. So I think John is at the moment, you are, I think, since 2008 in 7, okay, in Emirates. So it's a great pleasure to present him because, in fact, we met in 2016. And since there, I think we have been receiving John several times in Porto because, in fact, we have a unique project. And also, I suppose he is creating a unique business in Emirates. So, John, please, I think today is your time. I already talked a lot, so please explain us how important was this project that we was creating here, and specifically how we can make business from these disruptive ideas.
Good. Can you hear me? Good. Well, thank you for having me here today, and it's great to see you, Manuela. It's interesting. It's very hard to get from San Francisco to Porto in normal times, and in pandemic times, it's almost impossible. So I'm glad to be here, and I just need to settle and relax a bit to be with you. Look, we started talking about the idea of taking waste streams and making them into products at the dinner we had back in 2016. And it was interesting. If you know Manuela, when she talks about the work she does, she is super passionate. And it was clear there was a capability here in Porto and a great academic focus on the science that I believed could really develop some new products for the world. And so we started discussing how could we do that? And we ended up in a great collaboration. We already have a pipeline of great products, a lot of work to do in commercializing those products. And I would say the biggest benefit, because there's always a business case behind the choices we make. And the biggest benefit I see, the biggest business component I see, is working here with Católica in Porto gives us access to amazing talent because the talent, especially now more than ever, wants a great quality of life and wants to work on amazing science. And when you can combine those two things in a great place to live, why not? So I don't think it's more complicated than that. The rest of it is, you got to do some good science. But to me, that's the simplest thing I can explain. It's being here is a great place to attract amazing scientists. We can give them great work, great challenge, and they can enjoy a great quality of life and hopefully do work with us for a long time. I think we're at 70 or 80 researchers now. And my goal is to double that. And we're in the process of doing that. So hopefully my next trip, we're well over 100 working here.
That's great. I remember when we were talking, I was talking with you the first time. I was telling the different projects we had with different companies in the field of brewing, meat, and so on. And probably I said the word that, we have a great number of interesting results. The difficult part is that companies until now, they are not putting this in the market. So, and I remember saying, because you didn't start working with me. And I think at the moment is really, really an opportunity. So I think sometimes, some years ago, we were studying waste streams, we were trying to understand the potential, we were trying to develop new products, but then it's very difficult to put them in the market. All the regulatory issues, even the market is difficult sometimes to introduce these molecules. So can you tell us what you need to face, and especially what will be the strategy to introduce these products in the market?
I'd be happy to do that. But I want to remind you, you did not have, the other thing I love about working in Porto is the people are so understated. So Manuela did not have interesting results. Manuela had great results. And I did not understand, how can you have great discoveries, but not have commercial success? And I asked her that, and she started explaining to me what, the experience she had. And for me, the takeaway was companies in Portugal, number one, don't understand risk. And number two, don't have access to capital to really innovate and commercialize new technologies. I also don't think they have a big enough market to sometimes take the risk necessary to be able to exploit new technology. You can almost think about it the other way. Sometimes having a small market is easier to take risk because if it doesn't work, which is actually very likely, most risk doesn't actually work, it fails. But if it fails, so what? It's only 10 million people, doesn't really matter. But anyway, it was really challenging to see that she wasn't commercializing any of the discoveries. And so when I looked at it, and I maybe give you a little bit of background, my mission is really simple. I believe our planet needs to be healthier. And I mean that holistically, both the planet itself from a sustainability perspective and the people on the planet from what they use, both for their bodies, what they eat, how they take care of themselves. I think we just need a much healthier planet. And my objective is simple. I want to accelerate the transition to sustainable consumption. I want all of you, every time you buy something, you buy it in a way that what you're buying is actually sustainably sourced, is good for you and good for the planet. And I believe the only way to do that is make amazing products. Because if you're given a great choice and it's not more expensive, you'll choose it. And every time you choose it, you're actually doing good for yourself and the planet. That's my mission. We've invested several $1 billion to do that. We've had a lot of success. At the time I met Manuela, I had a vision of creating consumer brands to be able to commercialize those products around the world. At the time, we had an ingredient business. We currently supply we supply the flavor and fragrance industry. We're the largest supplier to flavor and fragrance industry of sustainable natural ingredients. We supply cosmetic companies. We supply industrial companies. We supply a lot of companies around the world. So the idea was, if we can find these amazing molecules in the waste stream, and we can make them in a way that would be disruptive for these companies, then I could be a channel to take this great technology to market. That was the idea. And today, we're doing it not only through ingredients, obviously we're doing it through our consumer brands. We have now 9 consumer brands in the portfolio and expanding our consumer business around the world very quickly. But again, on one basis, sustainable ingredients from waste streams and fermentation. The waste streams are developed here in Porto, and the fermentation is produced in Brazil. It's a simple business model.
Maybe I'm going to tell a little about our first ingredient. So when we were writing and designing the project, we decided also to include not only sugarcane bagasse, but also ashes. And at that moment, we were thinking ashes, someone was saying, nothing is going to be produced from there. But in fact, our first ingredient is from ashes. Ashes produced when they burn in Brazil, the sugarcane bagasse. So we were producing our first biogenic silica. So we can, as the plant is growing in the soil, they are absorbing a lot of silica. And then when we produce the ashes, this silica is there. So we were transforming with a high purity, producing the first biogenic silica that is at the moment being tested by different clients of Emma. So my question for John is, how difficult is to convince the clients to change from a normal mineral silica to a biogenic silica, assuming that we have a sustainable silica here?
You have a sustainable silica, you have a great performing silica, and the biggest problem we have now is we can't make enough to meet the demand. So you didn't want me to embarrass you, right? So we got to actually make more product faster. And let me explain, right? I mean, we've been sampling the biosilica to customers now for over a year, I think. And the acceptance takes time. But what's interesting about the biosilica that we make, that Manuela and her team discovered from the ashes of the sugarcane, think about that. The ashes of the sugarcane replace the need to process sand to make silica. That's why we call it biosilica. What's interesting, like most things that are sustainable, is the performance properties of the silica are actually better for making cosmetics than silica that comes from the sand. And it's better because the particles are finer. And when the particles are finer, you're able to take color and paste it together. So when you put it on your skin, it actually stays on your skin longer. Matter of fact, twice as long. And for somebody that's buying cosmetic products, having a product that lasts twice as long is a good thing. And we've actually formulated it with another ingredient we have that makes it a moisturizer as well as great for color. So biosilica becomes a really disruptive product in color cosmetics, as well as many other markets that use silica, because the properties of the silica we make are better than the silica that comes from sand. And I think that's an important aspect. When I think about the products we discover, and I think about sustainability, for the products to really work, for adoption to happen quickly in markets, the products have to be no compromise, meaning they have to perform better than the alternative. So in this case, biosilica needs to perform better than silica from sand. Secondly, it needs to cost the same or less. Because if you tell a consumer, buy it because it's sustainable, but by the way, it doesn't work as well and we're going to charge you more. That's a pretty hard sale, right? But if you tell them, you know, actually, it's sustainable, it performs better, and it costs the same or slightly less, then the market switches very fast. And that's exactly what we're seeing with the biosilica. We created a brand called Rose Inc. Off of the biosilica. The brand is fantastic. It's a partnership I have with Rosie Huntington-Whiteley, one of the world's leading models. And she just launched this brand with me. And again, the product is amazing. It is now on track to be one of the top 10 color cosmetic brands in the world. And it came from a product discovered here. That's for me what's most exciting. I'm not an academic, so I don't like doing research for the purpose of research. I like doing research for the purpose of innovation. And the way research becomes innovation is that actually it becomes commercial and it changes something, hopefully for the better. So it's great to see biosilica, but you know, it's not just biosilica, Manuela. You've got now 15, 20 products in the pipeline, not yet developed like biosilica. But what I find interesting is I go around the world and I talk to a lot of big companies and I tell your story. And every one of them becomes curious and wants to learn more about the work that's going on here. And I think for me, that's the exciting part. It's not like I look at our project as a start. What I want to see is many of the big companies coming here, bringing their waste and asking you to profile. Because again, if we're going to make our planet sustainable, we have to turn those waste streams into value. And you do that better than anyone I know. So I'd like to see more work here.
Not me. Thank you. Not me. It's a big team. It's several researchers, Portuguese researchers in general, but I think is a long story of research we have been doing here. So it's accumulation of knowledge and good people. So I don't know. I think we need to close. But maybe before we close, I'd like to ask you just to give some advice. We have different companies here, and I think all of them are probably thinking about what can I do with my byproducts. You just don't need to come to me, but in this case, but special, I think the advice would be, how can we transform a problem I have in-house in an opportunity? I think is maybe.
Yeah, look, I'd like to use an example because I think it may inspire the group or at least give some ideas. And then I'd like to start with what inspired me to come here, because you just talked about this. My inspiration comes from a long time ago, about 22 years ago. I was working in London for BP. At the headquarters. And most of my friends, I lived in London for 7 years, and most of my Portuguese friends in London were super smart, super educated. Most of them had PhDs. And it always bothered me. Why are you working in London? This place is horrible. The weather is horrible. I mean, the food's not that great. The wine is like all imported. Like, what the hell are you doing here? And you'd hear the stories, right? Well, you know, back in Portugal, I really can't find a great job, or, you know, they were working for a multinational company and became senior and needed to leave the country to be able to grow their career. And I thought to myself, that's just not right. Why as a country can't we employ, challenge, and inspire the greatest minds? How can we be competitive globally if we don't actually create opportunities for our best people? Why do our best people need to leave the country to have a good job? That's just not right. And from that day forward, I was super motivated that if I ever had the opportunity to find a way to bring great technology to Portugal and to create opportunities in Portugal to hire our own, to bring them back in the country, to give them great opportunities to do great research here, that's what we would do. So when the dots connected, it became obvious, right? So I want to now give you a simple story about how to think about responsible sourcing and using waste streams. I purchased a company, a brand earlier this year, a brand called Costa Brazil. And Costa Brazil is an interesting brand. It's a fantastic luxury brand, great products. The products are based on ingredients discovered in the Amazon. And I thought, okay, let me make sure I get this right. So you discovered an amazing ingredient, brio. It's a fantastic ingredient. The brio comes from trees in the Amazon. And you want your brand to be really successful. So that means if it's really successful, That means a lot of Chinese people are using your products. Millions of Chinese people. Okay. So they're all using the product, and we're extracting this amazing resource from the Amazon. At what point do you start damaging the Amazon by extracting that ingredient? And so my mission with that brand is simple. It's to bring that ingredient here, understand what the active molecules are in that ingredient, and then actually make those molecules from fermentation so it can be sustainable. But you don't, and then you stop extracting from the Amazon. But here's what you do. You take a percentage of the profits equal to what the village that discovered that ingredient would earn off extracting the ingredient, and you put the profits back in the village. Here's why. The people in that village still have to live. It's very hard to say, I want to be sustainable, but then destroy people's lives. And I think being sustainable and responsible have to come together. So that's, if you have a company and you're thinking about how to be sustainable, you have to think about the total system. You have to think about not just being sustainable, being responsible and making your products accessible to all, not just the rich people.
Thank you, John. Amazing. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I think we need to. What's your, Antonio, control the time?
Make a very, very quick comment. Amazing presentation. This is very, very key, John. This is very key for really to elevate a territory and the hub. And let's hope we are at the level of the elevation and the waves that you bring. Together with all the international partners. I would like also only to make two comments to the audience and to those people that are listening to us, that are watching us online. There are some questions from the audience that we don't have time to incorporate, but we are going to read all them, and we are going to try to address them. So if you have questions, please send us. Second point, we have amazing material that it is impossible to accommodate because we are now going to the closing session. We'll have a perspective on the EU Green Deal that João Cortés from Católica Biotechnology is going to provide us in recorded form. Also, we have something that I would have liked to pass it today, which is an example from Italy of a transformation with business, something called Regeneration 2030, the movement of B Corps that is getting massive involvement in Italy with several business leaders as activists. So we will share. This is a 20-minute video that we cannot pass today, but we will share with you all. We'll see how to technically do that. Let's go for closing the session with the deans of the business school and of the biotechnology school. Many thanks to all of you to be here. And don't forget, this is the start, both from Planeteer's angle and I'm here on stage, but there is here within the audience, the founder of Planeteers, Sergio, that, took the movement, that generated the movement. I have here Carla, who was Santos, that was with Sergio Ribeiro on the launch of Planeteers with 20,000 people online last year, plus some 2,000 present in Lisbon on the Green Capital of Europe only event physically. So please, I'm passing to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Antonio. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Católica Porto Business School and Católica Porto. Let me just say that we at Católica Porto Business School are very delighted to be founders of the Insure Hub platform, together with Biotechnology School and Planeteers. This is a theme that is very dear to our school. Since the beginnings of our school, we have thought hard on how to embed ethics and sustainability in our education, in our research. Just to tell a little bit of history, back in 1996, we were one of the first schools to have a business ethics course in our undergraduate program in management. So this relationship with sustainability and ethics goes back a long way. So we're very, very happy to be involved in this platform. We have a number of projects going on in these areas. Let me briefly describe a few. For example, we are proud signatories of the Principles for Responsible Management Education Network, which is sponsored by the United Nations and requires our school to lead by example and make a number of pledges to a number of SDGs. So we are trying to adopt as our way of life a number of practices that contribute to the United Nations SDGs. Another example is the Globally Responsible Leadership Initiative, which is an international community focused on development of globally responsible leadership and practice. We saw today that a lot of the issues that we're discussing today require strong leadership and responsible leadership. And so we are part of this network, which is a reflection forum internationally on how business schools can contribute to train, to develop these sorts of leaders that are crucial for what we've been talking about today. Another example, we have the Ethics Forum, which is a forum for reflection with companies in the north and overall Portugal. And so we talk about ethics, we talk about sustainability. I see Elena Gonçalves back there who's coordinating this project. And just very recently, this forum, this team carried out the Ethics at Work survey in Portugal, which looks at ethical working practices across the world and provides a really interesting benchmark for how Portugal compares in things like inclusion, diversity, and so on to other countries around the world. And I could give you a lot more examples of networks and projects, national and international, in which are involved at the business school. All of these activities are backed up by very solid research and consulting carried out in our research center, in our consultancy unit, and in 2 applied research labs. For example, one of these labs is on leadership, and again, it deals with responsible leadership. And the other lab is on service management, and it researches things like the servitization of manufacturing and sustainable product service systems and so on. So we do have wider business school research that addresses some of the challenges that we discussed today. So in this context, our engagement with the platform comes very naturally. And so I'd like to thank also the team who put the platform together, João Pinto, Manuel Pintado, and Antonio Vasconcelos, who did a wonderful job, not only putting together the network, but arranging the sessions for today. So I'll close by offering an open invitation for all of you to engage with us, with the network, and contribute in any way you feel is productive. So thank you very much.
Good afternoon to everyone. It's good to have the opportunity to greet you all present in this room, and also those that are sharing with us the afternoon through Zoom. First of all, I would like to thank our rector that's been here with us today, and our pro-rector, Isabel Braga da Cruz. They fully supported this initiative that we at the Biotechnology School, together with the Católica Porto Business School and with the Planeteers, decide to launch. I would like to greet my colleague, Professor Rui Sousa, Dean at the Católica Porto Business School, because we are together in this route. And thanks to everyone who made this launch of this platform possible. In particular, I would like to leave here a big thank you to Planeteers, whom I thank in the person of Dr. António Vasconcelos. It is very motivating to be someone from the economics field who believes so much in the power of nature that is with us in this initiative and who inspires everyone with his help. I also congratulate my colleagues Manuela Pintado, João Pinto, and João Cortes. They are the main drivers of this initiative here at Católica, and naturally my warm wishes to every single speaker that we had today, and the opportunity also to thank all those unsung heroes of this inauguration. We are all motivated by this exchange of ideas. I really thank everyone who took the time throughout the afternoon to bring us these solutions and vision. And if you allow me, I would just like to give some, or to say some words that I just kept and that we heard. We heard the words awake, change, and then transformation. And if you allow me, I will sum them up as act. This is a message of urgency for us to change. And we heard people, engaging, collaboration, regeneration, inclusiveness, responsible, holistic, purpose, health. It is in fact in our hands to grow together as part of nature. As we heard, we need to be aligned with the living systems, and those work perfectly in symbiosis. I'm quite biased here because it's my research area. And to finish, I would like to recognize the value of the organizations and companies that accepted the challenge to be with us today. It is a sign also of their commitment to the urgent change that they have already started to implement for sure in many cases. One of this year's Nobel Prize was Dr. Syukuro Manabe, who demonstrated years ago that the rising temperature in the planet is in fact due to the increasing levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And on receiving this award, he was very humble to say that that was not hard to do. What is really hard is defining policy. I believe that the organizations that are here today can be the driving force behind the policies we so urgently need. On the part of the Biotechnology School, the commitment to make a difference and occupy a place on the right side of history is reinforced today by hearing all these speakers. Thank you very much. Let's get to work, starting with Dina, where networking opportunities will open our creativity and our palettes. Thanks for this amazing afternoon.